Your friends are doing.
All right, Julie, it's 6:30. Can you call the roll, please?
Kara Caston. Here. Ken Dawson.
Here.
Chris Espinoza.
Here.
Jenny Hagstrom.
Here.
Terry Pavasich.
Here.
Don Renner.
Here.
Gianna Hunchy.
Here.
And Ella Mocap. Here. Thank you.
Okay, we have a quorum. Can we stand for a pledge of allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Hank, I think first item of business is yours.
All right. First thing is recognition. November 15th last week was School Board Members Day in Illinois. We recognize at this time of the year our 7 board members who are volunteers and our 2 student board members who are also volunteers that serve to represent the community on the board. Small token of our appreciation is there. Also, board members have received their school board governance pin that recognize that the board was recognized for their excellent governance practices. So thank you all for all that you do, and I greatly appreciate the work that we do together. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And Hank, you might mention that this is not the first year we got these pins.
No, we've gotten
This is
them
like
every year since I've been on the board,
at
except for the
least-
time during COVID when they weren't handing them out.
Yes, so this is not a new thing for us. We're used to doing this.
All right, back to you, Don.
Item number 4, approval of minutes. Can I get a motion for the Board of Education to approve the minutes of the October 16th, 2023 business meeting, the November 6th, 2023 workshop meeting with action item, and the November 6th, 2023 closed meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Terry moves, Chris seconds.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Chris Espinoza.
Aye.
Jenny Hagstrom.
Aye.
Kara Caston.
Aye.
Ken Dawson.
Aye.
And Don Renner.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
Item number 5, Julie, do we have any visitors?
No slips.
Slips.
No slips.
Back to you, Hank.
All right, I'm going to turn this over to Gina.
Thank you. All right, so tonight, we are going to be presenting again on the school report card. As I shared before, we've broken it up into several different presentations, hopefully shorter presentations, about various topics. You may recall last time we talked about summative designations. I shared some of the things that were new on the report card. Tonight, we're going to talk about SAT data, even though we did talk about that in October. As you may recall, we talked about the preliminary data, and we talked about it primarily as cohort data. Okay, how students did, for example, between tests, between PSAT 10 and SAT for the class of 2023. Tonight, we're going to look at it in a little bit different way and do some comparisons to some of the local high school districts. We're also going to talk about 9th grade on track tonight, for which I have our associate principals for curriculum instruction, Jake Giblin from South and Keith Pals from North, who will be talking, after I share the data about 9th grade on track, we'll be talking about how the buildings are working on improving the number and percentage of students who are considered on track based upon the state's definition. So that's what tonight's presentation will entail. We have one more upcoming school report card presentation, which will be at the December board meeting, which will talk about chronic absenteeism. And you may recall that I said before that that's an area that we are focusing on. So we've decided to kind of talk about that at that meeting, and also bringing in associate principals who work with attendance. Okay, so tonight's presentation, we're going to start with SAT. And again, we did talk about SAT when we were talking about preliminary data, meaning before the data went public. The data went public, I believe, on October 30th, if I remember correctly. And when the data goes public, we get additional information, not just the average scores that students receive, but also we get information about the percentage of students who meet or exceed standards based on the SAT. And it's based on one test, the state test, not necessarily a student's highest score, right, but that state test in April. And so what we're looking at here, remember the SAT is composed of two parts. There's the evidence-based reading and writing, sometimes referred to as ELA or English Language Arts when we're talking about meeting standards, and there's the math section. So this slide basically shows, and we usually look at 5 years worth of data, and I've started to also put on a 5-year average, so you can kind of see where we've landed beyond or within those years. And again, 2020 is missing because that data was not available. We didn't test, so we don't have that information to share. But if you look at,
Is there, 2022 looks like 33 in red, but 2023 looks like 31.
yeah, I noticed the lineup doesn't look correct there. So I did notice that just actually earlier today. But the percentages are right, I did go back and check.
Oh, okay.
So essentially, when we're looking at this data, we're not looking at cohort data. We're looking at 1 year compared to another year, which is not necessarily the way we prefer to look at the data, but that's what is available on the report card. And so as you can see from this evidence-based reading and writing section, we actually had just a slight increase in the percentage of students who either met or exceeded standards on the test. For example, we actually went up slightly in both the meets and in the exceeds section, which brings us up about 4%, a little bit over that. You'll notice that the state also had an increase. Typically, not always, we'll see that consistently with increases between our scores and the state. Not necessarily the same rate of growth, right? Not necessarily the same rate of difference, but that's been pretty typical.
But did the state actually go down from 33 to 31.6?
Yes, they actually went down, so this is an anomaly for us because we are actually exceeding what the state is gaining or losing. And you'll see that in a couple of areas too. When I talked at the October meeting about average scores, that was also very interesting because the average for the state typically comes out later when it's official, right, on October 30th. And when we look at the evidence-based reading and writing, when I compared 2022 to 2023, it was about a 1%, I believe it was a 1.1%, but ours was almost 7, it was 6.9. So not necessarily the same.
And I'll remind everybody, as I always do, there is great risk of comparing year-to-year data when we look at SAT data, right? Because it's completely
It's
different
different.
groups of students, right? Although, when looking at the 5-year average, you know, when you start looking at those kinds of things, when you look at trends over time, you know, that does tell you a little bit. And it's also important to point out that overall scores on SAT have gone down for the last 40 years, right, in year-to-year scores. So a downward trend is pretty typical year over year for SAT.
Well,
So-
aren't the questions different every year on the SAT too?
The questions can be different, and this year, it's going to be very different.
Okay.
So this year, so next year at this time, I'll be talking about the test. I'm not really sure what I'm exactly going to be saying because the test is going to be different. We're now going to a digital platform for the test. It's still going to have the evidence-based reading and writing section and the math section, but the test time is also shorter. So it's all digital,
Wow.
which up until now it's been,
Okay.
you know, paper pencil, so to speak. And it's a shorter time period for testing. It's shorter by almost two hours, like an hour and a half. So shorter
That's-
time period. It's also adaptable. It's an adaptable test now, which essentially means that not every student gets the same question. So the student adapts, which we have other tests that are like this. For example, we use the STAR reading test, which adapts, but it's a very different test. So next year, while we oftentimes, as Dr. Thiele is absolutely correct, do not like to compare across years, we're going to have to be especially mindful of that next year.
Yeah.
Now, the College Board is saying that the scores should not look very different.
Well,
That is what they are saying. But until we're there, I'm really not sure.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Jan, I'm gonna make sure.
Is it the same amount of questions?
No,
Less. Less questions?
It's
It
less.
depends.
It depends on and the timing is different. When you think about the average amount of time per question is different. And it's different between the evidence-based reading and writing section and the math section. So it is a different test.
So is it
And you know
just
how
like-
before you had the no calculator
Yeah.
section? That's gone.
So is it
So
just
it's
like how
all
many
calculated.
questions you can do like in that period of time then?
No, if you master a concept, you move on to the next
Gotcha.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
question that you get might be different from a question that I get.
Okay.
Now, does it know if you've said the right answer? And then
Yes,
it
it
moves
does.
you to another section, let's
It's not
say?
necessarily based on a single question, it's on how you're performing, right?
Right.
It's more complex than, I'm trying to simplify it for the purpose of
Right,
explanation.
right. But
But it
it's
will be
still,
interesting.
that's complicated, and everyone is different, so.
It is, the good thing, at least from my perspective, is that students are used to taking tests online. Many students take tests online, so that's not completely foreign to them.
Right.
Many of them have taken either like a STAR test, or especially in elementary school, junior high school, middle school, they'll take the MAP test, which is also online and adaptive. So it's not a completely foreign concept to our students.
It is to us who
It
have
is,
taken
yes,
tests
yes.
years and years and years ago.
Yes, it is. I am with you on that.
Can you remind us why the change again?
Why the change? Why the College Board has decided to go digital? Well, I
Well,
think
even the whole concept sounds to be different.
everything, it is vastly different.
Yeah.
Many tests are adaptive, and they believe that you get a more accurate score overall when you have adaptive testing. So hopefully, the scores are more valid or are consistent with what students know and are able to do. One of the advantages that they have said of the online is shorter time for scoring. So although the time really isn't that long for students get the results like 3-ish, 4 weeks.
6 weeks.
Took 6 weeks this time?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Schools, we get them months later. So usually we get scores, and they're not even final, and that's in July, from from an April test, excuse me, where students are usually getting them like May, end of May. The one other thing that is different too, is that in the past, it had to be on a designated day. So all students in the state of Illinois are taking the test on, I'm picking a random date right now, April 10th. Now we have a window where students have to test. Similar, for example, for our students here, similar to like the ISA, when we had a window, right? We would
science
decide as a
exam.
district, the Illinois Science Assessment, sorry, that we could decide.
Are we
So
only,
very different test, sorry.
are we only administering the test on one day?
We will administer the test on one day to all juniors at the same time. However, it's possible students with accommodations could test on more than one day, and we also do have makeups for students. Because SAT is, there's several reasons. One reason is because the SAT is a graduation requirement. So we obviously need to have students test. But it's also an opportunity for them to take an SAT basically for free. State supported. So yes, we will have makeups for it, but we will test the juniors on the SAT on one day. And then the other is just smaller groups will test after that. So it'll be interesting to
When you
see.
said there was a decline, did you mean nationwide?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
and then is the PSAT moving to this type of?
Yes, all three. So PSAT 8-9, which is given to ninth graders, freshmen, PSAT 10, which is given to sophomores, and then the SAT, which is for juniors. All three of them will be digital.
Okay.
Going back to 2023 scores, so this slide here is, and typically we look at the high school districts, so these are the districts that are not necessarily unit districts, these are the districts like ours that only have high schools. We look at them combined as an average, which you can see that there was growth. We also look at our district and compare that. And then this one breaks it down by the other high school districts. So again, we look at only the high school districts here, and again, this is the evidence-based reading and writing, multiple years, Again, we typically look at 5 years, and you can see that for the majority of those years, 4 if I remember correctly, we have kind of been sort of second, hanging on as second.
These are all high school districts in DuPage
Yes.
County, all of them?
Yeah, these are the high school
These are
districts.
the only,
Just only high school districts in
Yes.
DuPage County?
yes. So the same idea for math. As you can see, we are slightly,
Is there no data for, you're saying these are districts that just have high schools? So there, is there no data for the?
Generally
unit.
compare
we
ourselves to-
generally compare ourselves to high school districts for a variety of different reasons. Many of the schools in the high school districts are large, like our high schools are. It's not to say some of the unit districts don't have larger high schools, but some are smaller as well, and they're focused on high school. So this is math. So we looked at evidence-based reading and writing already. This is math. As you can see, we're down a little bit in the percent of students who met or exceeded standards, as is the state. You may recall from the figures that I shared before, when we presented, actually, our average was up, but not necessarily our percentage of students who met or exceeded standards.
Gina,
Same
looking at the trends for EBRW versus math on our 5-year average basis, it looks as though on the EBRW, we're relatively close to our 5-year average, but math, is that a significant drop? Almost 3% over our 5-year average? It seems like we're trailing in math compared to EBRW as I read it.
And it's interesting if you look at it, because if you look at actual scores, which is what students are concerned with, our math scores averages are typically higher than our reading scores. So it's interesting when you think about it that way. But yes, it is. And if you take out the first year, which Hank had talked about with scores going down nationwide, that average does come down significantly. But yes, it is, we are lower. What we're looking at more specifically in District 99 is the growth between, like I presented on, and I believe it was early October, the growth between PSAT 10 and SAT.
And remember, this is the meet or exceed on the state score, which is what, 540 or higher
540 for both.
for both?
Evidence-based
Which, if you look at that in comparison to what SAT says, that's 60th percentile, somewhere around there. So that's part of the reason too, is just where they set those cut scores in comparison to where they are for the
Right,
test.
and this is where the state sets it higher than what the
Yeah,
College Board sets it
what the
at.
College Board sets it at.
Okay.
So I skipped ahead, I'll go back.
Sorry,
I
I
just
stole
skipped
your
ahead
thunder.
because I wanted to show this, because this is what Hank was referring to. So the state has set the number at 540 for both evidence-based reading and writing and math. But the College Board readiness benchmark, which would put us in the green, which is where we would want our students to lie, in the green. Basically, red, if you look at the bottom portion there, red would be like a couple of grade levels lower than where a student should be. If you think about the yellow there, it would be like a grade level, and then the green is where we want our students to lie. 480 is the cut score for that, but the state's is a 540, which essentially means that if a student is meeting or exceeding, they're basically in that roughly top third
Right.
of students
Nationwide.
nationwide.
So that's why the data looks different than when you saw it with the scores, right? Because now we're comparing to the statewide cut scores instead of the overall scores, which is what students themselves are generally more concerned with than this data.
Another thing that is, to me, interesting, but I like looking at this data, is that it's a 540 for the state for meets, for both the evidence-based reading and writing and the math. But for exceeds, the evidence-based reading and writing is a 640, and for math, it's a 670. So it's a 30-point difference.
Do those, the College Board levels and the state levels, do those vary over periods of time, or do those have been the
They've been
same
pretty
for
constant.
a
Yeah.
while?
Pretty constant for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, we will see as, the platform is changing too.
Does it give you any concern about our math scores, is what I was getting at, on a 5-year average basis?
This is pretty much the trend that you see nationwide post-COVID. And what the data shows us with elementary students is that this is the slowest area to recover past the pandemic. So if we look at elementary school data and those kinds of things, even things like STAR assessments or MAP data or all of those kinds of things, what you see is everywhere for English, you see a dip during the pandemic, and you see us starting to return on pace with the growth that we were seeing before the pandemic. So we're not back up to where we were, but like those lines are kind of running in parallel to what expected growth would have been had there not been a pandemic, right? So you see those lines running in parallel. What you see with math is a dip, and you're not seeing the return to the same shape of the line as to what was expected. What was expected, right, is you had this continual upward growth. What you have now is kind of this shape that's separating from one another. We haven't quite returned to where we're growing, and we definitely haven't returned to the spot where we're starting to make up ground and catch up to what would have been expected had there been no pandemic. So nationwide, you're seeing the dip in return to expected growth patterns with English. Math, you're seeing a dip, and you're seeing growth, but it's not growing at the same rate as we were seeing pre-pandemic. So this is on par in some ways with the shape that you would see of the data across the country.
Two other things I think to consider. One is, and I think we will continue to see this, more and more schools are not using, colleges and universities, I should say, are not using test scores. Students do not have to submit their test scores. So as that's not a factor, I think that also impacts us. The other thing to remember, and I know I said this when I showed you the schoolhouse on the school report card, but we did get 100% of our points, which 7.5% is for, they say ELA, but it's the evidence-based reading and writing part of the SAT, math, and then 5% was for science. So for our test scores, we got 100% of what we could get. Even though, right, as you said, the number went down, the percent went down.
So you think, since a lot of colleges are going away from using it, that students are not spending as much time and resources preparing for the exam?
There you go.
I think we have yeah, that's right here.
Ask our students, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How do you feel you did on the math?
I did good. I submitted my ACT, but like for all my reach schools, I went test optional.
And I have a lot of students who say that.
Yeah, like for the school, because all the colleges have like a 25th to 75th percentile. I was like, if I didn't fall in that, I just didn't submit it. So it was pretty easy to make that decision. Right. Or like if I was on like the 25th percentile, I just didn't submit it. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
now I feel like at one of the sessions in the fall from the counselors, they were saying because you now, for that exact reason, don't submit, that score keeps going now higher.
Oh yeah,
and
all the
higher.
college scores are so inflated right now versus like if you look at, which is hurting them, like it's like weird how they do it because like Georgetown, for example, like requires you to submit every single score you've had. And so they're like, it looks like it's easier to get into Georgetown because they require you to submit every score that you've had versus like a test optional school. So it's interesting.
That is interesting.
But they're not easy to get into.
No.
Right, yeah, like all the test optional schools, it's like you need a like 1,400 or above, like in order to submit it. So that's why no one submits it, so there's no point in really like paying the fee
That's why
to
Northwestern
submit the score.
SAT range is 500 to 580 now,
This is
Oh.
or
interesting.
1,500 to
So the
1,580.
text optional school, they're basically looking at your grades, and they're looking at, if you don't submit your grades, and you as a
Individual?
student, like.
Extracurriculars,
Yeah.
essays,
Yeah.
And the
Courses
rigor,
you've taken.
rigor of
Right.
That's
courses.
huge.
That's
On
huge.
all of their common data sets, like rigor of course you've taken has like shot up.
Yeah. And they're not
Absolutely.
supposed to
Using.
judge you on not submitting your test score.
That's
But they
allegedly.
do anyway.
Yeah, they
is
do,
what you're
yeah,
saying.
That's what
yeah.
I was thinking, how is this?
It seems as though many of the schools are just saying, don't even submit it, we will not look at it if you send it to us.
Yeah, like test blind.
Yeah, it is test blind.
Test blind.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then others are saying, if you think it's a good representation of who you are as a student, send it our way. But many of the high achieving students are like, well, unless it's a perfect score, because those are the kinds of scores I'm pulling down in my classes, I'm not going to send it to you, right? So it's really changed how it works. And many students are using, remember, this is just the test they take on that day. Many of our students use this as the practice run. And then from that, they can upload all of their scores to Khan Academy or to test prep sites, and then they use this as their baseline to improve from if they're trying to do that. So for many of our students, this could reflect their lowest score, not their highest score.
Oh, so you only see this one?
Just this
No matter
one
how
on
many
that one
times
day,
they-
no matter how many times they take it, no matter how much they improve, this is the score from that day.
And do you have any explanations, or is there any literature out there about why math is not rebounding like English is rebounding on a nationwide
It was just a
basis?
much harder concept to teach remotely and during the pandemic. Just a lot of the math instruction is one-on-one, it's small groups, you're up close to them. I mean, Jake could speak to it, right? I mean, and not to put you on the spot, Jake,
No,
but I mean,
But I can tell you one of the things we struggle with, I'll speak from a high school lens, I can't tell you what the middle schools or elementary or tracking up we're dealing with. A lot of the help we were able to give students in classes became very difficult to do in an online setting where you're seeing someone physically writing the math, being able to make adjustments and point out where those mistakes are on a more regular basis. Secondarily, and this is just a fact of what we saw, there were more students using apps in ways that they hadn't before, and so we were struggling trying to get them to use those as tools for learning and not for tools of just getting through a homework assignment. And then we were struggling with connecting that to assessments and helping them grow from that standpoint. So it has been a slow process, but it is picking up in terms of helping students within the classroom, being able to work one-on-one with them or in small groups as they're able to work with peers a little bit more readily than they had in the past. And a lot of times math is not as intuitive sometimes as some of the writing skills because at this level it becomes abstract and you're starting to work with concepts that aren't always just everyday things that you would do, and you just need more guidance sometimes one-on-one, and that got hurt. Nala was in my class. She can speak to, she was in my 2 honors class when we were doing it online, and we did the best we could, but it was a difficult learning environment from a math perspective for sure.
it's also interesting, this is a nationwide trend, even schools that weren't working remote, or states that weren't as remote as we were. It's such a concept that one thing builds on the other, that disruptions get in the way of that kind of linear instruction. We just know those couple of years were so disjointed in so many ways that it's being seen.
Do you find it's more serious with like calculus and some of the higher math, or is it that way across the board with the,
No,
lower level math?
without looking at the data specifically, just in general, with the students we've seen, typically if they're already at the higher end, their ability to work through abstract concepts in math is much stronger. They were able to weather the pandemic much better than students who struggle with math or have difficulty that need more one-on-one attention that we tried to provide in many ways as we could through the pandemic, but it was much harder on them than those students who are already at those honors or upper levels.
Okay.
And I don't think we're at the end of this yet. The nationwide data points to students right now in 7th and 8th grade being the furthest behind in that trend, and then the wave of students behind them is looking more like students pre-pandemic, right? So it's going to be a few more years of, and you'd think those students were in like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade as the pandemic was hitting, right? So some of those basic skills they've been slower to catch up on across the country.
Is there anything we can do to address those issues?
Do you wanna-
I can speak to, we're doing some of those
Jake was
things.
former
Yeah,
department,
Jake, yeah,
in case
yeah.
you don't know this. Jake was the math department chair at South up until this year, when he's obviously associate principal now, so it worked out well to have you.
Yeah, you know,
Thank
look,
You didn't know?
no, it's okay. To answer one of the questions you asked earlier is, are we worried? Yes, because we always want the students to do better, right? So there are things we are attempting to do, and I'm going to talk about some of them with the ninth grade on track stuff, so I don't want to jump too much ahead. But yes, we're expanding. You know, we've got peer tutoring in our math department. We've got more office hours for students to be able to work together. We got a reassessment policy that is asking students to keep coming back to their learning more than we'd had in the past. Sometimes we would take a test and leave it. We're asking them to come back to it more. So we're also working with trying to expand our kind of non-traditional teaching techniques to move it so there's more conversations in the math class so they can get help from their peers while teachers are helping other groups around them. So it's all things we're looking at and working on constantly. So the answer is yes, we're concerned, but we are doing things to try to help improve it throughout our days. So.
And while what Jake said is more the instructional side of it, and they're doing great work in both buildings. And in just a few slides, I'm not going to keep jumping ahead, but we do have the SAT prep class during our resource.
Which is great.
So that's
Fantastic.
one other way.
Very good.
Okay, so I think I talked about this slide.
I'm sorry, I took you
No,
out
it's
of
fine,
order.
I just, and then this one is the same as the evidence-based reading and writing, where we're comparing to the other high school districts, but obviously this is for math, and as you can see, the purple color in this one represents District 99, and we're kind of holding a second.
Well, it looks like all the schools are down.
Yes.
Similar
Oh,
patterns
yes.
So it's not
across-
like it's just us. It's
And it's at multiple grade levels. I just read an article about students struggling with times tables in, I think it said fourth or fifth grade. Like, this isn't just happening at the high school. Yeah. But as Hank said, and certainly Jake, right? Is there,
yeah.
I think we discussed that slide. And then, okay, so one of the things that we're doing, I just wanted to report back because this was something that we had talked about at the board level, something that is new this year, fits into resource. Just a reminder, when I say resource, I mean where the students' lunch period would be on an 8-period day. So on the 8th period day, if I have 4th period lunch, my resource is on Thursday when 4th period meets, right? It's a longer period. And I just wanted to share some information with you about the SAT prep class, and certainly the course is focused on the new digital test, right? There's no reason to go back and focus on the paper and pencil because that is no longer the case. So the good part about this is I do believe these students will have an advantage over students who prepared under the old paper pencil or looking at resources from that time. Students, obviously, they go through lessons. We have teachers who we hired purposely for this class. It's a 4-week course, and as you can see, we do have some open seats. I wanted to put on there a little bit about enrollment, so you could see, so if anyone is interested, we do have some open seats in both the evidence-based, or the reading and writing section, I should say, and in the math. We have fewer seats overall in math, and that is simply because we struggled to find teachers applying for and wanting to teach this actual class. It's not our teachers. It's not the teachers that teach during the day 5 sections of a class. These are teachers that just come a couple days a week just to teach for the SAT prep class. Because our teachers are teaching their own classes, right? So they can't be doing both.
Do I recall correctly that the staff is identifying students who could benefit from this and encouraging them to take part in the
Yes
prep
and no.
courses?
Yes and no. So we have some students who are identified and strongly encouraged, both at the student level and parent level, to take this class. So we do have that, but we also opened it up to students who wanted to sign up to take it. So it's sort of yes and. So not all the students registered are students that were identified.
Sure.
Oh, any other questions before we
Question.
run? Yep.
For the reading and writing, of the 900 open seats, we had only 347 students that registered
So far.
so far.
They can still register.
Okay,
Because it's like 4-week intervals, so they can still register. And I think we'll fill a lot of those seats as we get closer.
okay. Because I was just wondering if there was anything we could do to help get the message out and encourage the students to fill those seats, or if we're doing all those things and they're
doing
just
those
not registering.
Yeah, we were doing those things.
Yeah.
Do you think it is like he said, like they want to do it closer to April versus
I think that for some, yes.
October?
Yes.
Although,
Because they feel like
is
it'll
the,
be-
like the December test being given in this digital format, or is this like a,
The first digital I know that we're giving is later in the year.
okay.
The Saturday testing, the national test date, I should say. I know the students who signed up in the beginning, many of them were taking the NMSQT because that's given in October. So that really made sense, right? To sign up for it and then take the test, and that was digital. But I think as we go closer, we will get more students. All right. Ninth grade on track. Ninth grade on track is another area that composes or makes up part of our summative designation. It actually accounts for 8.33%. Even before it counted towards the summative designation, this has been an area District 99 has been focused on for years. And the idea being that we need to intervene early, we need students to get off to a good start, identify those students who perhaps are not, whether it's by this definition, which is the state's definition, or another definition. But the state's definition is that a ninth grader would be considered on track if at the end of their ninth grade year, they've earned a minimum of 5 credits. It does not count summer school, so it would be May or June, depending on when the school year ends for the student. And the student cannot have failed more than 1 semester of a core course. So that would be typically referred to the 4 cores, and that would be English, math, social studies, and science. Under this definition, if we have a student taking a reading class, it does count. It doesn't count courses that students actually are required to take as well. So for example, every semester that a student is enrolled in high school, they have to take PE. Now, there are some exceptions. Health counts as PE, and for us, driver's education does because we have a waiver with the state. PE does not count. That's oftentimes people think PE counts. It does not count. It's just 5 credit. It can count as one of their 5 past classes, sure, but they cannot fail more than 1 semester of a core course. Not all students take a reading course. So for many students, it would be just the 4 course. So this has been an area, as I said, that we have been working on for some time now. We basically ended last year in the same place as the previous. Obviously, I'm very proud that we are at the 96%. Would we like to see 100%? Absolutely, absolutely. But this is something that we are continuing to work towards. And then obviously, we've seen some growth with the state as well.
So remind me, what year is yours that students would have been freshmen during COVID? Is that
Seniors.
20? Oh, so that's you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we see a dip.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I had invited Keith, our associate principal for curriculum instruction at North, and Jake, who's obviously already spoke a lot about math tonight, thank you, Jake, but is now our associate principal at South, to talk a little bit about some of the interventions and what they're doing, focusing on ninth grade on track. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Keith. I will still drive. Keith, you can tell me when you want the next slide, okay?
So thank you all for letting us be here today to celebrate the work of the teachers and under the leadership of the department chairs, which is really what I'm sharing here. At North this year, all of the chairs had an opportunity to work with their departments, and then they came back and they created a student support action plan for any student who would be at risk or in need of support. That would include, of course, any of the students that might be getting close to going below that line for ninth grade on track, but it's also any student with a DNF, and some departments are also really focused on attendance as well and engagements. So like physical education department is focused on engagement this year to try and make sure the students are in class as well. We're going through a cycle this year with our chairs, so we have all the dates that we're doing check-ins. We're actually doing a check-in on the action plan next Tuesday. We follow a protocol, a consultancy protocol during that time where we sit down, we share, each department chair shares where they're at. They're expected to come with some data to talk about during that conversation. And then the other team members in the small groups act as the consultants. They listen, and then they give some feedback, ask some questions, and then we move on from there to the next check-in. So we have a end of semester 1 review, and then also an end of year review scheduled as well, where we'll talk about future steps. Beep. So what I have,
Like the film strip projector.
what I've done for you all is just summarize what those action plans involve for each of the departments. I can highlight a couple for you. For example, the CTE department and the fine arts department are laser focused on their entry-level courses, so that would include our ninth graders in there as well. Specifically there, you'll see that there are one-on-one conversations happening. Our chairs are pulling data and having individual conversations with those students to talk about the option of office hours, and then contacting any relevant support that might be able to help them, and of course reaching out to families if necessary. We also have teams like, I'll highlight English as well. The department chair there is working with the ninth grade team because they have new common assessments throughout the department, especially in ninth grade, and they have a new revision policy, so they want to see how that's impacting the grades as well there. There was my colleague, who, by the way, I put a gold star on his notes over here for his fine work already, and talked about math, but our math chair is working in conjunction with one of our teachers who is actually she's working on her administrative degree and is doing some interning along that line. So the two of them are working very closely on students who are in that area of D's and F's, and then they're using that data to talk with teachers about interventions that are there. Beep. I think on this page I already highlighted. You like that, Jake? You can use that when you're talking.
This is what the veteran leadership tells me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. This is veteran leadership at its finest.
Right.
So I mentioned the PE, health, and driver's ed department is really focusing on student engagement. We want our kids in class so that they can be learning, and also they can be physically active while they're in school. And also, I think the world language department is also one to highlight, not that every other department, of course, is doing great work, but they actually have taken a concept of they are all using great interventions across all their different classes, so they've created an intervention menu. So they're identifying needs and then going off of those things that they know work best with the students within our community. Sorry, that was longer than 1 minute, Gina.
No, that's
Can I ask
fine.
you a question? So, like, do you find interventions work across subjects? It seems like you do a lot of things based on the subject. Is
Well,
there,
yes, and this is really driven by the teachers and the department chairs at North. So whether the intervention is there is really driven by that. So a good example would be our social studies department is really focused on relationships. So last year they started with these conversations where they would really try and work with one student who may not be as engaged as, and they made a point to check in with that student every day for an extended period of time to really build a relationship, to then leverage the relationship to help the student academically. So each department is a little bit different and trying something a little bit different. So trying to be a little innovative in what they're doing for the students. The example of world languages is that everybody in the department is using interventions in their class that are being successful. So why not share that goodness across the department and really lean on our colleagues that are doing the great work down the hall?
Are you finding that, let's say a student is struggling in world history and would also be struggling in math, so the teachers can maybe work together to help that student? Because sometimes it's a different kind of problem.
Correct. So if it gets to that point, a student is usually referred to our alpha teams, which get together and really talk in depth about that particular student, if we're talking about really raising the bar to
help
to
that
the need
student.
that you are getting to describe, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
I yield my time.
You already exceeded your time.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to speak really fast. We've taken a different approach, and I'll talk about why in a minute. We basically, the 4th South APs meet monthly to discuss back on track data. We do it in 2 ways. We pull data from 5 labs related to both 9th grade not on track and also chronic absenteeism. This occurred because last year during our initial meetings as a team, at that time I was the department chair, we were seeing a lot of crossover. It is not 1-to-1, but there's a lot of crossover. Of the 44 who were being targeted right now, who are in danger of being off track, 22 were also chronically absent. So those are branched into different ways. We have student engagement coordinators who reach out to those students to try to get them into the building so that they can start utilizing some of those things that we have in the building at the same time. We also then use these lists and cross-reference them with our alpha teams. Many times they're already in contact with these students and have either contacted specific teachers related to the courses they're struggling with, or maybe have even moved them into Tier 2 interventions such as our guided study and other things. And when we find students who haven't been, maybe they're new to our list, those counselors and the alpha teams will immediately make contact with the students and begin that process as well. One of the things that we saw when we started this summer, and this is where I want to speak more holistically about how the 9th grade on track kind of wraps into a lot of what we're doing. Just briefly, we took a look at the 21 students, unfortunately, who weren't able to graduate on time this year. And what we saw is that 7 of them would have been on this list. 14 would not have been. So when we talk about 9th grade on track, we're getting about 96% of the students to where they need to be. The issues where students might not be graduating are more comprehensive and sometimes show up at different spots. We're starting to have a lot more discussions within the leadership team just about DNF lists in general. Sometimes that does encompass obviously 9th graders, but it's sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And if you take a look at the next page, beep. Some of those you will see are specific to freshmen. Math 1 double block in particular is a freshman intervention. It has been here for a while, but it is one that we continue to use. It is an opportunity for students who are freshmen who fail Math 1 to take it the full 2 semesters, basically in second semester. So they wouldn't have to take summer school to make up that Math 1 credit. So we'll begin reaching out to those students who are in danger of potentially failing Math 1. Guided study, peer tutoring are across the board. We are expanding our peer tutoring though. We've had a math peer tutoring program for several years, and the Writing Center and our World Languages have had some peer tutoring as well. We've expanded it to some social studies and science courses this year, in particular chemistry, physics, and U.S. history. We're trying to expand that a little bit further as we start to see students are really starting to volunteer and seem to enjoy helping each other. And then we have Strive and the other resource centers as well. But 9th grade on track is part of kind of the holistic piece that we do as they're doing at North. We did not spread it out because one of the major things in terms of asking departments to take some of this on, not because we don't think they should, but we've tasked them with, we're going through a reassessment practices, and they're charged with leading their departments through creation of those and trying to find our way through that. And so as a leadership team, we felt we needed to take that off their plates for now and consider maybe later date once we've moved in that direction a little bit more solidly.
Very good.
How successful so far has the peer tutoring been? Do you think that makes a big impact? And how many ballpark peer tutors do we currently have?
We have about 20, I think it's 25, I apologize if I can't remember the exact number, who have volunteered sometimes for multiple subjects. What we're really trying to do is we do think it has an impact, but a lot of times the word has to get out through teachers. We're trying to get it out a little bit more through just messaging I present or the teachers who run that peer tutoring group. At some point, we would like to consider expanding it so it oversees all of them, because right now they kind of live in silos. I can speak to math. It was successful for the students who were able to take advantage of it. But with peer tutoring, sometimes students aren't available when a student needs the help.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that becomes the difficulty. It is one layer that we try to put in for students to have access to help.
And so, go ahead. Are you identifying the ninth graders in progress report? We haven't really had like a grading cycle yet, or would someone go into like the double block intervention second semester of this year?
Mhm.
And so
It would be based on if they fail first semester of math.
so they might have to make a schedule?
Correct.
adjustment? Oh,
Yes.
Yeah, and for the grades that they're looking at them in real time,
okay.
like pulling from teachers' grade books to see where students currently are sitting.
Yeah, couple questions. The first one is, are you, at both campuses, are you seeing correlation between chronic absenteeism and those students ending up on your lists, as far as those students not being on track as ninth graders?
It's a constant conversation at North. We're trying, short answer is yes. Yeah, if we're not in class, we're doing okay, but we could be doing better if we're there.
Okay.
Yeah, what we're seeing is that, like I said, of the data we pulled, 22 of the 44 were chronically absent, but 22 were not, right? So there are students who are here who are struggling.
Yes.
And students who aren't coming who are struggling as well. What we've seen is that teachers do so much in terms of putting stuff online and providing resources for students. There are students who can succeed while still being chronically absent. So chronic absence isn't guaranteeing that they're on the list.
Right.
But is there a good chance that if they are failing, they are chronically absent? Like I said, it's 50% right now at South this year. So it's...
Yeah, but the students who are chronically absent, the percentage of those students who are failing is much higher than our student body as a whole.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is correlation. And then what are we doing about, how do we address that with parents?
I don't know if there's necessarily correlation. There's correlation that students who are failing tend to be chronically absent.
Oh.
I don't think that chronically absent necessarily is an indicator that a student will fail.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to
That relation
say.
is
Yeah,
kind
I
of flipped around the
apologize.
other.
Yeah.
It used to be, 10 years ago, it was a very, very strong correlation. If a student was chronically absent, they were going to be failing. Now it's kind of the other way. It tends to be if a student is failing, they tend to have a large number of absences.
They might be just bored.
So the failure is the predictor of absenteeism. Absenteeism isn't necessarily the predictor of failure, as it used to be.
And I think, and as a parent, I agree with your point that there are so many tools that missing school is not as, big, as
For
it once
some.
was. For
Right.
some, right? If
And
you're going to catch up, if you're going to go online and, right? I mean,
I think that's actually unfortunately, that's the danger sometimes too, is students see friends who are maybe capable of doing some of that, right? And maybe they're not themselves, and so maybe they fall into that trap. This is just some conversations I've had with students. So some students are able to navigate with all of those things. Others need to be in the room with a teacher, with their peers, to have that learning experience because it's difficult for them to get it secondhand.
What conversations do you have with parents for a chronically absentee student who is failing? Are you suggesting that they
Come to school?
come to school?
Yes.
And what is that conversation like? I mean, what?
Well, not to, this is going to, next month, this is going to be our whole focus,
Okay.
is chronic
Okay.
absenteeism. So, and we'll have the administrators here that are
Okay.
working on that.
I got ahead of myself.
Yeah.
For the
This
number-
is not quite on track tonight.
I understand, but there's,
But that's a good question, right?
there's, I would think there's some relationship there.
For the number 44, is that just freshmen, or is that the students in the entire school that are in here?
No, that's just the freshmen who are in danger of failing one of those core courses.
Not being on track.
Right.
And then my other question is, of the students who are identified and we're taking steps to try and put them back on track, do we follow them through their career, and is there any data that shows that because of this work we did at ninth grade, we've put them on track, not only for ninth grade, but set them up for graduation as seniors? Are we tracking that data, that like, here's what we're doing in an intervention basis, and here's our success rate?
I could answer that, because it's part of our presentation about 5 labs, but one of the things we're building right now is the cohort of students by graduation year of those that are not on track. And then we can use that as a filter when we're looking at them 10th graders, as their 11th graders, and then as 12th graders. So we're building each cohort. The cohort comes out we know it, but it comes out officially, I think, in early June, I believe, where the state actually gives us a list of who's off track by school. And so this year, we're building that cohort, and we're going to go back 2 years and build that graduation cohort so that we can track the students.
But you're saying, Jake, a quarter of our students that ended up in that spot last year?
Yeah, it's one data set, right? It
Oh,
was
I know, just
anecdotally.
one year, yeah.
It was 7 out of 21, so 2/3 were not part of wouldn't have shown up on this
Right.
I see.
data set.
Okay.
So it's just a small data set, but
It is.
it's not necessarily, it is a strong predictor over time and over huge data sets, and traditionally, students that fall behind in their ninth grade year do not graduate at the same rate as students that are on track, right? So you're looking at these big data sets, just like, that's why attendance is on there. It tends, historically across all of the big data sets, that student attendance or poor student attendance is a predictor of lower grades and that you're not going to graduate, right? And all of our data sets that are in that house that Gina showed last month are all things that historically point to getting students to the point of graduation and being successful after they graduate. But it's not always when you get down to the individual student, that's not always how it works, right? It's just looking at huge data sets nationally, what tends to be the case.
And the definition is more than one semester, so.
They cannot have failed more than one semester.
So someone could be struggling right now, get help or get an intervention plan and be no longer marked by the end of the first year.
It's always at the end of the school year.
Okay.
So what we're looking at is students that could end up in that situation based on the DF reports, based on the classes that they're failing. Because it's too early, as you said earlier, to know for sure, right? Because
Yeah,
we
but
haven't
I
even
mean,
done a semester.
but you could also correct it.
Yes,
in the
absolutely.
process of their freshman year.
Which is what, for example, math 1 double block.
And
Also have
that's
students that look fine now that might show up second semester,
True.
right?
Yeah.
But that's the work, like the different departments that he's working with at North, and some of the things we do when we work with Alpha teams at South that's why we're doing these meetings now and not in January when the semester's over.
Right.
Right? We're trying to get ahead of it. So we have a chance to get as many as we can out of that
We don't want
track.
to be in a deficit going into the second semester.
It makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
No, but both schools are doing a really good job of, they know every student by name, by need, by, what challenges that they have right now that are showing up on there, and they're trying, as I said, trying to close those deficits, get help, get it to work. We can't, always, we can do 100% of our 50%, right? We need students and families to do 100% of their 50% to close those gaps. And then hopefully, we get to the point of both sides have done all of their work and nobody is not on track. That's the goal.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You guys are free to go. You can yield the rest of your time, I guess.
Okay. Yield the rest of my time to you.
Kathy, you want to click?
I might need Keith to do the beeping sound for
Keith
me.
has got to do
You gotta stay, your sound guy.
No, you can go ahead and click through.
You'll beep at me?
Yeah, I'll let
All right.
Thank you, guys.
So it's a good segue to go into 5 Labs, because I know Keith and Jake mentioned, or it was in there about the 5 Labs data. And so I thought I would just give you an overview and some new features that we've created to, with staff to kind of, I think it might help to, your process of thinking how we're navigating this and the questions you're asking. So if you go to the agenda, so I'll do an overview. I'll talk about those custom dashboards that we built this year, and I'll highlight a few features. And then you'll see a visual. It'll be somewhat not readable. It's a little blurry. But the arrows point, and I'll talk about how you navigate it a little bit to give you a sense of how staff are using it. And then I'll also then talk about the impact on strategic plan, and then what our future is with 5 Labs and how it supports our buildings.
How long have we been using it?
We've had 5 Labs right before COVID, and then a little derailed with COVID, obviously, with the 5 Labs, and I'll explain a little bit how we used it in the last couple of years, and then we have a new kind of focus this year. So just to give you kind of just a quick overview, obviously eSchool is our student management system that houses all our data, grades, student information. We select certain pieces from that, and then we send it to 5 Labs, which is a third-party company that we use. And then from 5 Labs, it creates the different reports and things like that. Or what I'm going to be talking about is some custom dashboards that we built for this school year using 5 Labs. And then it obviously goes to the end user, which is our staff. So I'll give you a couple samples of that that they're using. So if you go to the next screen. Jenny, like you mentioned, so we've been using 5 Labs since right before COVID to launch it out. Last year, we focused a lot on bringing a couple of these reports, like the case management report, our DNF analysis, which Keith and Jake were talking about. And then we have an individual student report that collects different pieces of information to help our staff. That was all developed by District 99 to kind of support the initiatives that we were working on. What we found, though, in that is that there were a lot of bar graphs and things like that, and our staff were saying, we keep clicking through different pieces of data, and we just need a different way to do that. So in response to that, we created these custom dashboards, and so we have like a CSSS Alpha Team dashboard, activities and athletics. Our path is our in-school intervention program, student success. We each have, both buildings have one student success coordinator. Obviously our deans, there's a dashboard. A student assistant program coordinators, we have Keith and Adania, one at each school that work on prevention programs. And then we're in progress of building an EL dashboard. And then you can see on the right all the staff that are actually engaged in using these custom dashboards. And so now I'm just going to actually just show you kind of some of the features. So I think if you just go through to the CSSS one. So what you see is the image on the right is just a screenshot of what staff would see. I know it's small to be able to to really see the details of it. But really, I'm just trying to share with you just kind of the overall concept of how they're being used. So the main purpose of the custom dashboard is exactly what you guys are talking about in terms of identifying students. And so all these dashboards either give like a count, so we know what, like say in this one, there might be a count of how many students are, you know, failing a course that are freshmen. There's different filters and features. The piece that I want to highlight on the Alpha Team one is the threshold. And when I reference a threshold, we're using that terminology to kind of combine a couple different things to narrow a list down. So we could take the, say, the 9th grade class, and we'll see at South High maybe 500 and some students or whatever the number is. What we want to do though is look at, well, we want to look at the freshmen, and then we want to look at who is chronically absent, who's failing one or more courses, and who has a discipline referral. So that threshold is created to take those 3 factors and then narrow that list down to who meets those indicators. So for example, I'm going to jump ahead because I do this all the time. B, if you can see that arrow on the left pointing to the red bar, that red is a threshold. So that's taking attendance, it's taking the grades, and it's taking discipline, and then taking that student list, narrowing it down to if students are meeting those indicators. The orange, which is C, are filters that we can use. Like I mentioned, we could go by Alpha Team. Jake and Keith mentioned Alpha Team. So every student has an Alpha Team person assigned to them that comes out of our CSS department, and then they meet weekly with the Alpha Team to talk about student needs. That a lot of times happens behind the scenes, and then certain people come up with the interventions. It might be a check-in, check-out with a counselor. It may be the social worker calling a student down and working with that student. What I'd like to point out is this actual red threshold was an idea of one of our psychologists from South that called me and said, hey, I love this, but I need to figure out how to do X, Y, and Z. That X, Y, and Z was the attendance, grades, and discipline. And then she called me back and she's like, you know what, I love the red bar. You did exactly what I wanted you to do, but could we get, so the bar below it on the screen is a list of all students that give you all the information of attendance. So it might give you a list that will say, this student in 9th grade isn't meeting the attendance. They're fine at school, but they're failing some courses, and maybe they have a discipline referral. And they wanted to be able to do different sorting features. All the stuff that you're seeing here, these lists, they can be exported to Google Sheets that then the teams go back and use that. All our dashboards, you'll notice on the left-hand side, you'll see the equity lens in there. All the dashboards at the very end of the, you can't see it in this image, but you'll see it in other ones. We did everything to put an equity lens on it by race so that we can see. So for example, you'll see one of them that will show the in-school interventions by race so that we can get a sense of how many students by race have been referred to an in-school intervention. What I like about this CSSS, not only was our psychologist talking about that red threshold, our North CSSS team, the Alpha Team, for years have been really focused on transfer students. So my A, I'm going out of order here. So the A on the top there is pointing to there's different tabs across the page that have different data sets. And the second one is transfer students. So they can just click on that tab and they can see only students that have transferred to District 99 at North High, and then South has their own dashboard, and they can look at only students that have transferred that are at Down or South, and then they can look at all this. So it just gives them a wealth of information to then process. And again, I think the strength of it is that it's going right to our staff, and then the staff are giving us feedback at what to add and change and things like that. We had the staff also reach out and say, man, it would be really nice to know, one of the tabs is about hospitalizations and homebound support. We'd really like to see a running total count. So this is updated every night. So every day they can see if when they log into it, they can see current data. They can see how many students by count have been either hospitalized or on homebound, and then they can see student lists, and then that just makes sure that they're supporting those students. And like Hank, has mentioned, and, throughout the strategic plan about talking about, ensuring things, right? Ensuring this, we're ensuring that we have lists that we can make sure that we've identified students and we can go act on it. So again, that's the example of the Alpha Team one. Hank,
Hold
if
on,
you-
Scott, I want to just build on
yeah,
what
yeah.
you said, a couple of things. I know you're shocked. One is, what Scott and the team have done here, it's kind of like an early warning system. A lot of times, the data points out that something is going wrong before students' behaviors or grades do, right? So this is already gets a student on the team's radar before a general classroom teacher might see those same things show up, or, it gives a lens across classes that a single teacher doesn't get, but a dashboard like this gets. The equity lens, it's more than race too. It's also,
we could do
we do IEP, we do low income, we do EL. There's a whole bunch of different lenses we're looking at. So when we say equity, it's from a lot of different lenses of equity, not just race. So I just want to make sure those two things we
I appreciate
pointed
that.
out.
And I'm highlighting a little bit different features on each one just to show you like kind of how it's navigated. Some is kind of a little repetitive. So on the next one is the activities and athletics. I talked a lot about probably what A, B, and C represent, but I'll just go. So the activities page on the top, most of them have on the very top what I mentioned about a student count. So it'll literally be like how many students are not in activities. And then obviously every day that students join activities, that number goes down, which is great. So obviously looking at a student count and then filtering, say, by ninth grade, you can start to look at how many students in ninth grade are not in activities. Now, one of the caveats to it is obviously if you're a baseball player, you're not in season until the spring. So the data you got to be careful on, right? Like they're not involved in something yet. They may be in the spring, and maybe they just choose not to do something in the fall. But that shouldn't stop us, right, to make sure we engage. We'll find that out. We know our students will learn that. We also, encourage students to join different clubs. So it's not just about athletics. So this encompasses both our extracurricular activities and our athletics in that. And the features, again, is the student list. As you can see, A is looking at the student list of students not in activities. B was important on this one, even though I shared it on the other one, is that you can filter by grade. So if we wanted to focus on ninth graders, we can just click that button and it literally just repopulates the page to just the ninth grade data and the ninth grade list of students. And then C, again, the equity lens. And like Hank said, many of these pages, the first page usually has the one on race, and then we're building other ones about, we do look at low income, we're looking at students that are in special services, and a lot of different data points with that. And also, the nice thing about 5 Labs is we're kind of refining our longitudinal data so that when you look at a count, when a staff member is looking at it, they're really seeing a longitudinal perspective right in front of them, right away. So that's the activities page. The next one is our PATH program. That's our in-school intervention program. Again, what the nice thing, and I'm trying to connect with the A, is showing you the top red box is the student count of students that have the B code violations, which are the more significant behavior referrals. And then the arrows pointing to the red student list. So that count matches then the student list, so we know exactly who the students are. If you recall, the PATH program is engaging students that get a B code referral in a restorative practice. So this kind of gives our PATH coordinators, which is Nicole and Patrick, a lot of information to use, and they both have provided a lot of feedback on what they're looking for. So for example, they both wanted to see by incident date so that we could see the B code violations as they kind of start from the beginning of the year and go through the end of the year. And what they're doing is they're looking at a student if they're getting repeat offenses, because obviously the whole goal of the PATH program is to see if we can work with the student to adjust the behavior that, if you're, say, fighting at school, that you're not fighting at school again. So I give them a lot of credit for giving a lot of feedback on this dashboard as well. And then Hank, the next
section's on the strategic.
Yeah,
plan.
strategic plan. I just actually went through the strategic plan and just did little cutouts of anywhere that, in just my opinion, as I'm working with our teams and the strategic plan that Dad has mentioned, it's probably more than this, but I just gave you a few samples. I wasn't gonna read through them or anything like that, but the color codes give you, it kind of spans most of the strategic plan. So, we're obviously excited about linking the data to the plan and to student support. And then really the biggest thing is the next slide is just about our amazing staff. You can again see who the staff are that are involved in this. All of them are giving feedback on these dashboards, and it's just been, they're the ones that are, I always say that they're probably smarter than me. They just give me the stuff that they want to do, and I'm like, we'll figure out how to make it work. So I really do appreciate all their efforts. You can see that it spans from our Mustang Way and Positively North. We mentioned our alpha teams today, our student activities, like Jen and Mark are working on different initiatives to support students with the data. We have our special ed case managers, working with the data. And you can see like student assistant program coordinators, Keith and Adania, are looking at prevention models and, the different data around substance use and abuse and how we can, we know who the students are, how do we continue to support and help families? And then like Hank mentioned, we're really trying to get preventative. So one of the things we'll talk about, I'll give you a little preview to our December meeting about attendance, is really looking at not necessarily the students, we are looking at students that are chronically absent, but we also have a way to look at it when they're getting close to being chronically absent. And so it's a click of a button that you can see that list of students, and then we try to go and target those. So again, the staff has been great with this. You can see the uses of all the dashboards, so it's been amazing this year. And then the last slide is talking about just transforming 5 labs. Don, it goes back to your question. So when we're looking at academics, right now 5 labs is building. Right now we can look at D and F grades, and so you can filter just by F grades, and so you can see the 9th grade students. What we're doing is we're building a core course dimension, which will really turn into a filter that allows us, we've loaded all the core courses that a freshman could take. So when you click that core course filter, it'll just populate a list of students that, then we can add those thresholds, right? We could say, well, we want to look at, students that are low income. We can filter by that and by core courses and see which students we might need to, pay more attention to and that might need support. Obviously, Hank has cabinet data retreats that we have. We're using 5 labs to build different pieces with that, to look at data and longitudinal data. I already mentioned to you the feedback from the staff has been great in terms of really helping to build them and to improve them. And then the last one is really just talking about the attendance one that we're going to talk about. We'll share with you the 5 labs attendance page. Now you kind of know what they look like, so you'll see another screenshot with the A, B, and C's. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Karen and Kelly will be here. And then we'll walk you through kind of a case study of how we're just doing one intervention, just so you can get a sense of how we're using 5 labs and our staff and our team to really make a difference. So we're excited about our partnership with 5 labs, and it's, like I said, the dashboards have been great this year, so. And with that, any questions?
So I would imagine some of these parent conversations are difficult, emotional, and, right? Have you found any of the data, like, does this help kind of with those conversations, so you can sort of take some of the personal, like, does that help at all on those? Or, I get it, it's more at a cabinet or teacher level. Does it come into those conversations at all?
I don't know if the data helps. Obviously any data, like I could go back to my, my days as a department chair at North, and I know when we had conversations about, placing students in classes, and you had data to show the different levels of students or where they're at and what is the best wraparound support. The data absolutely helps parents to kind of get a perspective. But they are delicate situations. It's not easy to talk to a parent about, nobody wants their student to be failing a course or being chronically absent. And, students are dealing with a number of things, in their lives. And so our goal is to really identify the students through data and then really kind of, it's almost like a qualitative approach to then find out what's the function of why are you not attending school? And is there something that we can do as a school district to help? And I agree with Hank. I mean, it does take the parents too, for support, but we need to do our role in it, right? And not give up, and we don't. So even though a student might fail a course, it's not because we're all trying, with that. So, but the data does help a little bit for sure.
And this is real time,
It's real-time data every day that gets updated, so if a student has a D in a course right now, and in a few days from now they're failing the course, that would show up right away. So it is real-time data that we can look at.
Would you say that the groups that are accessing it are looking at it almost daily?
Like our staff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, our staff it's really kind of built from their perspective, of what they wanted to see. So yeah, I would say that, we don't really monitor that. We could look to see when someone logged into the system. But honestly, the dashboards staff have been, I think, really excited about this piece now, where it used to be they were looking at bar graphs and trying to figure out, what do I want to do with this? But now it's like, oh, we could build, like the psychologist at South. She was like, wait, I could build something that gives me these 3 categories and narrows my list. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so then we're just kind of doing that kind of stuff. The one thing I would say that it also has done is, when you think of our path coordinators, they're also collaborating because they are seeing and identifying students that are obviously violating the B code violations, which some of the B codes are substance use and abuse, right? They're also now working even more closely with our SAPs, with Keith and Adania. They're all seeing the same data, and it's kind of a check and balance, and it gives them a sense of, a little team collaborative. We have our SAPs are working more in the PATH program than ever, to support students. So it's just been a great process. Even Christy and Mike, who are our student success coordinators, they have a dashboard, and last Friday they were chatting back and forth and, sent me a update just saying that they love the dashboard, that they're going to continue to, give me feedback on what they might want to look at. And it made them think differently too about, what kind of data we're capturing for them, really to make their role more efficient, but ultimately more efficient for them is better supports for students, so.
You were saying the psychologists and social workers, what kind of data do they find most useful in capturing through utilizing this?
Yeah, so the CSSS alpha one that I showed you at first, they're really the threshold to be able to look at lists of students that are kind of, they're maybe having a risk of attendance or chronically absent already, and they're failing a course, and they have a discipline referral. Mm-hmm. They're finding those lists really helpful. And that piece, I think, is it was great to, when we first made this over the summer, 5 Labs, when we first introduced it, again, the bar graphs, people were a little frustrated, like the staff were frustrated. As administrators, we're looking at it going, oh, this is great, we can see lunge, but now, they're just literally, could you please load us all in this? We love this thing. And then they're just giving feedback. So, but to answer your question, on that, the thresholds have been really helpful. And we'll talk a little bit more too about, we do have, when you look at chronically absent students, there are chronically absent students that are passing all their classes. And so that's just a whole nother avenue that we have to, look at. So it's not just we're looking at chronically absent students that are failing courses. We're also looking at chronically absent students that are passing all their courses and trying to figure out, how do we get buy-in? How do we get students to understand that it's important to be in school and that, so.
I think one of the key differences that Scott has taken with the different teams this tool at, he talks about the bar graphs. When we do our senior cabinet data retreats and those kinds of things, we're looking at big trends across the district, right? And we're trying to see what's happening, just big, general, overarching terms. And those bar graphs and that kind of data helps us a great deal. But the folks that we're talking about here that have worked on these screens, what's most important to them is the list of students.
Yeah.
The names of the specific names of the students. that they need to be working with. So this tool has evolved to provide us both, this big picture lens that like people like me need of what's happening across the organization, but then the discrete data that our folks that are actually interacting with our kids and trying to intervene need, and it's serving that whole purpose now across the board.
I'm absolutely fascinated by this. I really am, and for exactly what you just said, Hank. I mean, the large data can be predictive in nature, right? And we can make decisions based on it. But the granular data on the student level, we're a big organization, and there can be students who can fall through the cracks. This is meant to avoid that situation.
Shake
and
those
catch it
students
before
out.
it happens, before it's too late, and for real change to be instituted and to help students. And that's what we're here for. And I congratulate the staff on building this out, and I look forward to where this goes. Because it sounds like you're still sort of in your infancy.
I mean, this is the first year they have these dashboards, so, I mean, we're literally the first semester of using them, so it will be great to see how it goes. I mean, we keep building different tabs across them,
Sure.
so there's more data that people are wanting to look at. So it's great.
And then you get to the point of what Jake and Keith were here presenting about. So once we know who those students are, what are our teachers and our staff doing to try to correct that, intervene, get it back on track, right? And then sharing across those departments, either within it or across it, this is working for us here, have you tried that there, right? But all of that together makes this whole system of support that, has always been there in different aspects and pieces, but now it's starting to become more comprehensive as we get these tools.
It's going to make us a better organization.
Absolutely. All right, thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Next section is capital improvement. We have some different folks taking different pieces of it. So I think, Jim, you're up first, right?
I will lead it off. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So we have a few matrices that are on the screen tonight. I'm going to go through the first and the second. Just overall, always want to throw out there that these numbers that you see for project estimate or concept budget numbers, some of these projects that you'll see tonight will be coming back to the board for approval once we go out to bid and get low bidders and bring contracts to you for approval. So you'll see numbers. Those are my best guesses of where we'll be on some of these projects. Other ones are locked in, like the annuals, and I'll go through them quickly here. But just wanted to let you understand that how we get to these numbers in the bottom line. So these aren't fixed as of right now. They can change, go higher or lower as we come back with bids. Large RMS is our first one. That's district-wide. It's $100,000. Those are the unforeseens that happen in our school buildings throughout the course of the year that the budget that the building cannot afford to fix. So I come in and help the schools if something breaks down, a big maintenance issue. Our bleachers are inspected yearly. This is a $15,000 allotment for not only the testing of our bleachers, but also the repairs. So each year we put a number in so that we can keep up with our bleacher repairs, both indoor and outdoor. Here at the ASC, we have two, and I'm proud to say that the HVAC upgrades should be our last for a while. You may not remember, but some may remember that we replaced our heating and air conditioning in the last 2 years here. These are the controls. We still have a pneumatic compressor that, for the air for some of our thermostats. I want to get that eliminated. This will do it. We'll have better control. Sometimes in this room, this is one of the issues that's going on right now, is our VAVs that control this room aren't keeping up with the temperature that's being set. So sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's warm. Hank will call me on a board night when I'm not here. Tell me to put the heat on a little higher or the AC on a little colder. So that'll repair that and also eliminate that loud compressor that we have downstairs. The conference room wall dividers, those are right here. We can look at them. These are these 1993 specials. They are old. They are falling apart. They're heavy to move. So we'll get some new ones similar to what we put in the MFP for both north and south in some of our classrooms as dividers. So those are two here at the ASC. Moving to north, and these are annuals. You see this every year. This is for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. These are for classroom things that break down that need to be replaced. For example, a teacher podium, a chair that's consistent with the other chairs that needs replacement. So these are school funds that they can replace those things that are needed. Grounds repair, this is for all green space outside, for turf and for grass for repairs. You'll see the same for south, so I'll skip those as I go down. So they're for both sides of town. At north, right now we're experiencing some problems with the sound system at north in the main gym. And that is when a part or something is faulty, we're having a hard time replacing it. The system is old, it needs to be replaced. So we did get some quotes, and $50,000 will get a new sound system going into the Purple Gym over that north. The auditorium rigging repairs, and it's really good for both. South's brand new, so that is a new system. So I try to get to the buildings and the auditoriums and do these safety. So I hire a professional company to come in and look at all the safety issues and all the auditorium rigging. That's all the stuff that's in back that plays and everything goes on, and making sure mechanically that's all working. We got a report back from two different companies, actually. This one had some repairs that are fairly immediate, so I want to get on quickly and get this work done for next summer. Others are medium, but I still want to do that work and do all the repairs. It's roughly $160 to do them all for next summer. BAS at North. I'd like to touch on this a little bit because I'm proud to say that the last few years we've really done a lot of work with the building automation systems at both North and South. And I've pushed it because our system 10 years ago compared to now is night and day. And with COVID and the air quality in our schools and our classrooms and air handlers and chillers that are in certain sections, it's very hard to control that air, not only for temperature, not only for better energy savings, but for that turnaround of fresh air. And what we're seeing now through these last few years is it's so much better. And what's the result of that? Less kids, less staff being sick. And you're really seeing that. So that turnover of fresh air in these spaces, this is what this is buying. Having that full control right off your computer to do this. We want 20% outside air because it's a nice day like today. We're bringing that air in, bringing more fresh air in, or if it's too cold, we're going back to 10 or 15%, and then we'll bring more heat in. So that's when I go through these BAS building automation systems. That's what we're really doing, and we've been doing it for the past 4 or 5 years consistently, and we're getting to a point now where all of our equipment outside of the new, which already have it, our old equipment is now have these new controls, and we can actually see things and do things that we couldn't do before. So that's at North, $65,000. The John Deere tractor is a 2003 John Deere tractor that is breaking down, needs to be replaced. It's not only used in the summer, spring, it's also used in the winter as a sweeper to do the sidewalks for snow removal. So this is for the tractor, including all of the attachments that are needed. FF&E for South, consistent to what I just explained for North. Grounds repair, same as North. Asphalt. Last year we did the student parking lot. This year we want to tackle the west events and the road, Mustang Way Road, which is from the stop sign where you come out from the west events to Springside. So you get those 2 speed bumps and you turn into the west events. We're doing that whole west events parking lot and that road coming to Springside.
Thank you.
And last on that list is the BAS, consistent with what I just talked about at North. For South, a little bit more money than North, and I'll explain what we're going to do to offset some of that here in a second. Life safety, so that's capital. That's our usual 1 million-ish that we do. Again, those are a couple of those numbers might go up, might come down, but we're right around 950 for those concept budget numbers. Life safety, a continuation of the North galvanized piping project that was already approved. We have the funding for this. Phase 1 was last summer. We bid that out. Actually, we came in under budget. We got that work done. We still have some funding left from that that could be applied towards this if needed, because this one involves a lot. We are tearing down walls in the locker room, in the pool, that we need to get behind those. We don't know exactly if we'll run into asbestos. We may. That might slow us down a little bit. So this is a larger project. Obviously, $2 million is a lot of galvanized pipe to replace with copper. A lot of this is domestic feeds. So this is a big one, and that'll happen next summer. We're trying to get this out to bid early to get aggressive with plumbers and companies out there to give us a good number. So more to come with that. That'll come back again as an approval for this group, but we already have the funding for that. Last but not least, just want to touch, last year we did a $50,000 maintenance grant that we were approved for. We used that towards a project last year. I know Jerick came to you within the last couple of months for approval to move forward to do a second round here. So this is the 2023 maintenance project grant. We're applying for it, and we are going to use the BAS at South as a project that we would possibly put in for as an offset of the 50,000. So that's still in the making, and we still need to put that in, correct?
You went in.
It went in.
I just haven't received it yet.
So hopefully we'll receive that. If we get that 50,000, that'll offset something off of the 950, but specifically the South BAS.
Okay.
Okay.
Questions for Jim on this set? All right. Move on to the next slide here.
So these next areas really tie into our tasks related to this year's goals, and that is to continue to modernize, adapt, and support academic, extracurricular, and common spaces, right? So we're continually looking as we plan. There's a lot of planning and preparation that has been done already just to bring this to you. A lot of conversations have been had, a lot of different meetings, right? But as we continually strive to evolve and have the great spaces for our students, our community to engage in, that's what we're bringing to you here tonight. So you can see that for the north and south, everything mirrors each other, right? So the down to the dollar matches when you look between, and then the project when we look at the additional improvements for that. So the board has already discussed and approved both the stadium turf fields and outdoor track replacement. We have already had multiple meetings with Field Turf, and we have gone through and we're finalizing. We have some upcoming meetings that will finalize the layout and the design of that. It's gonna be really cool. So that a lot of, again, conversations have gone on with that. Another area that we are investigating, and we have been doing so all year, are new scoreboards. So we're looking at digital scoreboards, and partially with that is so that we can have some ad revenue that we get from those, right? So
Well, I'm worried about the village.
I've already had a meeting with Dave Fieldman and let him know that we would be replacing our scoreboards, not digital signs.
Correct.
So
Yeah, but
I've already had that conversation with the village administrator.
I want to go full steam ahead.
So we're working to go full steam ahead, right? So with that, we're looking at we went through a lot of, I've had conversations with multiple districts that have these digital scoreboards. We've also sent out a survey and gotten feedback from, I believe it was at least 10 different school districts that have digital scoreboards, and saying, hey, who'd you use? What did you find? What are you seeing? All of those different things. So we've been doing our homework associated with this. We actually had a demo this last Tuesday that was provided here. So we got to actually hold the iPads that you can do the different things between the ads and the game and the clock and lots of different areas there. So in looking at those potential, what we're looking at is for an outdoor stadium for the scoreboard and to redo the sound is $500,000. Now, that includes all of the, with our estimates today, all of the infrastructure to make that happen. So that is, we're responsible for getting all the power, fiber, all of that ran. So we're pretty confident that that number is right there to be able to do that for both of the stadiums, and again to replace the sound for each of those outdoor areas.
So that'll be great.
Yeah.
I saw some at the conference, and those digital signboards are really
it's
cool. Really cool.
It's
and if we can also go a little bit with the advertising, that'll cut down on that cost to
This
us.
is for a sign outside the schools, so
That's
this
what it
is a
looks like.
scoreboard and?
Scoreboard, these are a couple of renderings from the company.
So this would be the outdoor for the stadium, and we're having conversations about location, but you can see this is up against the building. So we're, again, looking through the different components there, but this whole thing from here, that is all digital, right? So they're all LCD.
What's the size of that, Travis?
This one is 22 by 35. Okay, so that is, again, the whole digital display. And then you can see that on the indoor, up to the left, again, that whole thing is a digital display. And they have the software that goes along, and you can again program it. You can have different things, and it literally is as easy as hitting the ad screen to then going back to the clock. I mean, it's very user intuitive and lots of different pieces with that.
So that price is for indoor and outdoor?
So if you look down, so the second line is $500,000. That's for the outdoor stadium and sound. That fourth line is the main gym scoreboard, estimated at $250,000. So that, again, both schools are at that same price point, and we're looking. One of the reasons why we're looking at doing both, because we had initially started talking about doing the outdoor stadium. In talking with the company, about 66% more ad revenue is typically seen when you have both outdoor and indoor available. Think about it, you have a lot more indoor events throughout the course of the year. So that would allow us to have some additional revenue that would help offset that. Plus, we would get a discount, and that is reflected in these numbers, okay? But we would get a discount because we would be doing both the indoor and outdoor.
So generally with those digital scoreboards, maintenance and stuff like that, are we on a contractual term?
Yeah, so they have
Stuff like that?
Yeah, they have the best warranty. What we're looking at, they have the best warranty in the business. It's a 10-year warranty, and literally it's a plug and play. Each of the LCD panels are literally, you just take one out, put another one in. They actually have some on site where they store them for you, and so if you have to take any out and put them in, it's very user friendly. And they do have there's other, I can't remember what the specifics are for the other lengths of maintenance. I think it was 5 years, if I remember correctly. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yes, there are other components that are built into that.
And my last question, advertisements. I'm assuming we don't do that today.
No,
Not
we're
today.
allowed to, we just haven't engaged in it.
Yeah, okay, because
Yeah.
I'm really smart at sports, not, but we So we would just have to put a plan in place of how we would want to
Correct.
run something like that and open that to the community, who's gonna get first and shot at it, and, yeah, okay.
Yep. Lots of work to be done.
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
area, But yes.
Yeah.
And the great thing is we do have some strong connections and ties to school districts that have done it, right? So we're not starting from scratch, if you will. Obviously, each community is different, but we have some good plans in place that we can look at.
It's not often that in a school district you can come up with a new revenue stream. So, this is a real good opportunity and good timing for us to do that.
And I know, like, parents of the community have reached out about that. I mean, I assume the businesses are eager and receptive and.
Yeah, I'm excited about that opportunity for us, which will lead us into the last thing, but I'm not going to go there quite yet. But that is, that could really be a game changer for us in what we're able to do with our classrooms.
Now, are you gonna ask about?
I was going to ask,
Design?
I was going to ask how, yeah, well, that's coming up, but
Not talking about the digital side at this
I'm
point.
trying to be very
That's not
politically
allowed.
correct.
That's not allowed yet.
And,
Not in
and,
this
Not in this
and-
package of
proposal.
improvements, okay.
the scoreboard and the interior, do they think that they're, would last 15 years, or is it 10 years? Because that's
So it's-
how long the contract usually goes for maintenance, is that, what is the lifespan?
So the company we're looking at has a almost double the number of years of any other company.
Okay.
But if you were to turn them on and leave them on, they'll run for more than 20 years.
Oh, okay.
Of constant use.
All right.
So when you think about that, we're not going to be running them 24/7, right? So yes, there is that longevity. Now, there's a lot of variables that play in technology, as you know, and different things that can come up. The good thing is that they are LED, right? So they should last. The maintenance on LED is pretty minimal. Again, it's that plug and play if you have a component that is out. More on the software side, right? If there was an upgrade or something along those lines. But it's like a big TV.
That's all it is.
Right? That's all it is. So you could plug in Roku, any of those things, Apple TV, right? And it will Xbox. It'll run all of those different components.
Will we get instant replay?
So, so there's a lot. I will highlight one thing that's really cool when we were talking is the fact that there's an app that goes along with this, and if individuals have the app and they use their phone, right, and they video something that happened at the game or the event, okay, it will then, they hit submit, it will send it up to the press box. It will condense it to a 10-second snippet. Someone can look at it and say yes, show, or no, and it will show on the digital scoreboard. Wow. So it could be
Instant
replay if you had someone in the right area, but again, it's just using your standard phone. You don't have to have like all of this
special equipment
or anything along those lines. But that could be something really. There's a lot of things that we could do with this that could incorporate and bring kids into this as well. When it comes to the ads themselves, the construction of the different components, there's a lot of learning that could occur with this.
There's huge career pathway opportunities here. You go to every major stadium in the U.S., there's somebody that's designing the media that plays on the scoreboard.
Yes.
Somebody designing the sound, that's designing the graphics, that's playing all of that stuff, that's controlling all of that. So these are real job, workplace type opportunities that students will be able to experience here on site. And if a student's really good at this, they'll be able to go right from us to the workplace if they choose to.
Think of the opportunities to improve the overall atmosphere and experience at our athletic events. I'm a huge Nebraska football fan. So the tunnel walk before the game. I mean, that's an opportunity for our kids to design an entrance for our football teams or our soccer teams or our lacrosse or whatever it is. It's not only an ad source, it's not only potentially improving the atmosphere, it's also an educational opportunity for these kids to get involved and do that and get excited about it and get more kids involved in our athletics. And with the success that we're experiencing at D99 in our athletic programs, this is the perfect time to invest in something like this.
Well, it's also expandable. So let's say we've got the scoreboard where it is currently at both schools. It's kind of far from where the viewing is going on. So if they wanted to put one on the other side, you could marry them, can't you?
I'm sure there's a way.
There's many options. Talking with him last week, we could put, he was throwing ideas at me. It's amazing what can be done.
The sales guy had lots of ideas.
Yeah.
Of things he could say.
There's endless possibilities.
From like Dallas Cowboys, we could do like a ring.
You
Yeah.
could,
There's a
all
lot.
That's all, yeah.
Basketball.
And those indoor and outdoor ones, not only for athletics, activities, think of all the things that happen in the course of a year in our schools and outside of our schools. And back to your maintenance, I think we spend more on maintenance than our current ones. I think the longevity of these will last much longer.
Right,
I
yeah.
really do. And just being able to take a piece out and put a piece in instead of replacing this or having something else go wrong is so much better. We've had great success with
The pool.
Yeah.
LEDs. I mean, is the pool awesome?
The pool is awesome, I will
Well-
say.
This is just similar to that.
Somebody put that, write that one down. Please get that in a minute.
And I would think that also it, you know, when we get this up and running, it would also be a stepping stone for us to get that outdoor sign, because they can see how successful it is.
Work with the village so that that would be allowed first.
Yes, I know, but
Yes.
One last quick note on the group that Travis just went over, the fieldhouse floor and track for both north and south. That's probably summer of '25.
Okay.
Just a note, because we really want to push that another year, because we're taking down the outdoor tracks and turf fields. And if we do the inside as well, we will impact camps, and it'll be tough to do that in the summer
Right.
on our two campuses. So those two will probably be a year out. Just wanted to throw that
Plus,
out early.
Jim will be long gone, so he'll be saying,
Now, remember, this is my last group of projects that I'll be involved with, the
Yeah.
thousands that I've done.
yeah.
Throw it all out there.
So, yeah, I love seeing this. It's great.
Cheryl, what were you saying?
I was just gonna say, well, the thing with the stadium scoreboard and the gym scoreboard, it definitely sounds like a gift that's gonna keep on giving, which is great. And I don't know if you said this, I may miss it, do we know any, schools that have that locally yet?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
you said that, okay. And I only ask that because we don't have to, reinvent the wheel, and we can figure out
Correct.
how to
Yep.
jump in right away with these advertisements and how to leverage this, for the kids too, success
Correct.
and how they're doing things and how we can showcase them. So all these great ideas.
Yep, very much. We're right there.
A couple other things I want to point out on these, not that it sounds like you're all sold, but we did have the demonstration last week, and it was one of those super bright sunny days. And I can tell you, we could see that screen better than we could see the scoreboard at North on Saturday, right? Like, we could see the videos just as if it was here on this screen. So it was really impressive to see the quality that you have there.
140-degree viewing angle,
Yeah.
which is unbelievable.
And then, as Travis was saying, it plays all media. So just think of the opportunities for rentals and those kinds of things, like every youth group in the community could be doing a movie night out on the field and, renting that space, or in one of our stadiums, or, in one of our, like, there's all of these other, and that's just one idea. Like, there's all of this other potential revenue generating beyond ads, where drive-in movies are gone, but we're open, right? So there's a lot of ways that we can work creatively within having these resources that currently it's just a scoreboard, right? It just shows the score, where this will expand our opportunities in ways that we can't even imagine at this point.
Hank, I think it's important to remind the board that when we came, I think back in May or June, we had shared that the scoreboards, I think, are in need of being replaced.
Mhm.
So whether it's these scoreboards or some other ones, the ones we currently have about, what, 1 year left, if that?
They're falling apart. I mean,
Yeah.
they really are.
Yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So we got to replace them with something.
Yeah.
This is the time to replace, to upgrade, really, into something that really other schools are doing. I think the information that we got from these other ADs in schools that was shared with us, and there were great questions like, what worked well, what didn't, how's your process for advertising? How did you lease these? So those are so many things that we still need to go through and look over, but it was really interesting to see the differential of what they said was successful and non-successful.
All of these are things that are reaching end of life. Okay, the turf fields, outdoor track have already reached, we've extended those beyond their expected life. The scoreboards, both inside and outside, need to be replaced. The field house floor and track, all are things that need to be replaced. These are the types of things that were on the master facility plan. But when we went and started meeting with the committees, the idea of dedicating referendum tax dollar resources to athletic facilities was the lowest priority in the community. And the answer was figure out how to do this later, right? Don't do this now with the master facility plan. We're now 5 years past that time. This is the time for us to figure out how to make this all work. Jeree and Travis and Jim and I have all been looking at what are the ways to pay for this within our resources. Jeree's going to come back with our 5-year forecast in January, and with that will be a plan for how we finance all of this stuff within our budget and make this all work. But this was pretty much the direction from the community when we went out, and especially the group of community members that advised us as to what our next steps should be with facility planning, was don't do this work as part of the master facility plan. Do it later. Later is now.
How does it look for our softball and baseball scoreboards? Are they going to be needing to be replaced soon too?
They're nowhere near as old.
Okay.
They're not used as much, but smaller, easily to repair compared to the size of these big ones. But I think once these, once everyone sees these, I think it'll go and as those.
They'll want them.
I think all of them will be digital.
Well, if we show that these screens are going to pay for themselves
Selves.
in X years, then the decision becomes pretty easy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
Just like the pool.
Right.
And we can use that as a.
A
as one as
springboard.
Nicely played. Nicely played.
So we can dive right into this.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to change lanes and talk about the final classroom expansion and major renovation. So in looking at this, and we wanted to break this out again separate, we have 2 areas, one in each building that we want to renovate. At north in the World Language Office and the classrooms, and then at south in the Career Tech Ed CTE areas. We have worked with White to get some preliminary estimates, and this is where we're at with those. We ideally each year moving forward, we would have at the bottom of this, we'd have classroom expansion renovations at the bottom, and that would be a yearly thing that we're talking about, right? And a large part of that will be the ad revenue that we get from our digital scoreboard. So that is something that we're planning on keeping there. So that is something that we're going to tackle every year and get down and have a specific purpose set for those. So any questions about either of those?
Very exciting. Thank you.
Big, lots of team, lots of conversations, lots of things, again, to bring it even to this point. There's a lot more work to be done.
So as Jim mentioned earlier, this isn't like up for approval. There isn't a vote. These come back as individual projects later on. But this would be the time that if anybody sitting at the table is like, whoa, I have major concerns about what's being proposed, as Travis just said, we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we get all of this right. And if there's something that the board is not interested in us pursuing or investing time in moving forward, this is your opportunity to please speak up, and we can kind of discuss one of these further or come back at a different point and provide answers to questions. I think most of these are in line with all of the things we talked about at goal setting and everything else across, but if I'm wrong, please speak up now.
My only thing is make sure that the Mustang on South football field looks like a Mustang, not a Greyhound.
Our one's all over it.
I get told that every single time one of my family members comes to a game. And that's been that way for 10 years.
I wouldn't mind having a board member involved in the discussions that revolve into the ad placements on the scoreboard. I don't know if your team is forming a committee to look into this.
We're not to that point yet, but
Okay.
we'll bring back an initial plan, and once we do that, then let's have a conversation about how that works. Once we've
Okay.
kind of, at this point, it's too early
Sure.
for me to
I
say.
would just like
but-
the perspective of a board member being on that committee, because I think it's important, and I think it's important having a community member's perspective on that.
Yeah.
I like that, especially assisting with the revenue component.
Well, let us, before we
Sure.
decide that,
Sure.
let us work
Sure.
through it and put it together.
Yeah.
Typically, day-to-day operations would be the administrative side, right?
I get it.
And then we'll figure out what the board oversight piece is. In some districts, the board approves every ad. In other districts, it's, if it meets these criteria, it needs to come to the board for approval. There's a variety of ways in which this is done. We haven't fully worked out what our proposal would be for the board. We'll work through it, bring it back, and then at that point, let's discuss what
think
that looks
my
like.
perspective was more not oversight, but input, just bringing whatever expertise we have. I'm in sales, so I was, from that perspective, not necessarily from, do this, do that.
Yeah, well, we'll work through it and bring it back to the board, and that's where the whole board can provide some input. So, all right, any other questions or concerns on this? As we did refer to earlier, this is Jim's last time, so thank you, Jim, for all of your years of doing this.
And Jim's doing a 50-year projection
Yes,
for
he
us.
is. Now, how many years into your projection are you at,
I'm
Jim?
at 5 years already.
All right.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, last item for tonight is the tax levy request. Well, second to last item from the administration. So this one is Jerese.
Okay, so perhaps before we take a look at that chart, I'll just provide a little background on the levy. It's an annual process undertaken by all taxing bodies to request tax dollars for funding of its operations at this time of the year. In Illinois, we are required to file our levy with the county clerk by the last Tuesday of December. Tonight, what we're going to be looking at is just an estimate of our levy, and then next month, we'll bring it back for the actual adoption. But we will ask for approval on the tentative levy tonight. So to develop the levy request, we contacted the local township assessors to receive their estimates of amounts of assessed valuation of existing properties and that of the new property. And after we reviewed their data, we used the following key assumptions to develop this tentative levy. The CPIU for December of 2022 was 6.5%. That amount is greater than the limiting rate of 5%, so we use the 5% factor in the calculation. The equalized assessed valuation of existing property is projected to be right around 7.5% with all the townships. Some were around 7, some were 7.25, some were 8. So Hank and I met and we decided on using 7.5% as that factor. The estimated amount of new property growth is unknown, but we do have some estimates from the township assessors, and we have projected that to be right around 50 million. It will probably come in less than 50 million, but we want to make certain that we can capture all of those tax dollars, so we used 50 million for this estimated levy. So with these assumptions, the levy request will be greater than a 5% increase over the prior year's extension. It's existing property, which is capped at 5%, plus the new construction. As a result, we are required to give notice of this estimated levy request and to hold a public hearing. We recommend that we hold the public hearing at next month's board meeting. There will also be a slight increase in the debt service portion of the levy. That is set by the county clerk. That is expected to be about 0.12%, so it's very small. At this time, we can go ahead and take a look at the chart so we can take a look at the comparison. So there on the left, we see that's the actual extension for 2022. We received the actual amounts of EAV late in March, and then we come back to the board in April to set the exact levy. So the 2022 extension figures you're looking at, those are from from April. Then the 2023 tax levy column is just the estimated amount that we're proposing for tonight. Any questions on this chart? The next chart shows the cash balances as of June 30th and then the most current, October 31st. This is a new requirement that we disclose the cash balances to the public and to the board before we set the levy. These figures are strictly just right off of our treasurer's report. He's independent treasurer. Any questions on this chart? I'd like to point out one item. I noticed that in my write-up, I say we recommend a levy amount of a little bit higher than what was the actual. Hank and I were on last Thursday working with changing the percentages and that because we were still gathering information from the assessors. So I just want to correct that the one in the board packet states $108,356,520. It's actually $108,245,520. So just a slight difference based upon our changes that we made. Any questions at all?
So you,
Discussion?
just so I understand your process, you attempted to, in essence, project what the changes in EAV are. You, in essence, run a calculation to calculate the expected PTEL limiting rate, and then you're going to recommend that we levy above that potential amount so that in any way, shape, or form, we're going to capture the entire amount of the levy.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And this was a reassessment year.
And how, like, narrow of a margin are you guys, if?
Oh, I think we're pretty close. I think this was 5.91. I think before it was maybe 5.8 or something. It's pretty.
So your estimate was
Maybe-
5.8%, and you are recommending just going to 5.91, and you feel comfortable and confident that that's going to capture, even with the changes in EAV that you don't know at this point?
Right. We have the estimated amounts from the township assessors. We have the estimated amounts of new property growth. The largest is in Downers Grove with Longfellow.
Okay.
I feel pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
Going with especially with the new construction amount that we used.
Have we left any dollars on the table recently?
No.
I didn't think
Not
so.
recently.
No.
Okay.
And remember, if you leave them, you lose them.
Well, I'm
Right.
aware.
So it's a ridiculous process in Illinois that we have to do our best guess and not look like we are gouging the community, even though we wouldn't be able to because
That's right.
whatever. I mean, I don't understand why we do it the way we do it. I don't understand why every district doesn't just say 25% right now and then just let it
Let it
fall
ride.
where it
Yeah.
falls, because they're going to tell us
Yes.
what the amount is later, right? We just try to do this and try to get as close as possible to show that we spend a lot of time thinking about this and trying to be responsible for, the ask that we are asking for, but we have to ask for it before we have even close to all of the information we need to do a real forecast. And there are huge penalties to us as a district if we underguess, right? I know some smaller districts that just do 10% every year. They just 10% every year at this point, and then the county will eventually tell us what we're allowed to levy, and then that's what it is, because they're just so afraid that they're going to make a mistake, and you just can't afford to make a mistake, because if you pass it up, you lose it forever. So Dree has done a lot of legwork on this to bring something that is realistic and close to what we expect, but at the same time protects the district without leaving us open to lose what's there. Based on what Dree learns over the next month,
Right.
it could change when we come
Right.
back to you in December.
Yeah, that's my only comment.
Sure.
I counsel a lot of clients of mine on this exactly, and, now I'm sitting on this side of the table.
Yes.
I want to make certain that we capture every single tax dollar, and as long as you feel comfortable and confident that this number's going to do that, I'm okay. But I would also tell you, I would be more willing to make this 6 or 6.5
Right.
if we feel that we need to be more conservative, because I'm comfortable and confident in explaining to the public exactly what Hank just said. And so if you're confident the 5.91 is going to do it with a nearly 100% certainty, fine.
Well,
We'll reevaluate.
No pressure,
Yeah,
no
no.
pressure.
and it's interesting that I just received some more
Yeah.
information today.
Hey, yeah.
From one of the assessors. So it's still coming in, and with the reassessment year for all the township assessors, they've been very busy. And then DuPage County had a new software system put into place that's caused a lot of backlog and everything. So they've been very slow with providing their estimates just because they've been so busy and they're just getting through everything. So we normally have more information at this time. We have less information this year than I've ever seen. So we are going into this with more unknown information, I will say.
Okay.
But I'm kind of in Don's camp. I wouldn't mind going 6 and 6.25 or 6.5, just to make sure.
And just to be clear, just for if somebody's watching now or reading later, just to be clear, everybody is currently capped. Like the current residents, it's 5% because of PTEL, right?
Right.
So that amount is capped. It's not going to be greater than that. That's what it is. What we are talking about here is new construction, new stuff that's on the tax rolls that we've got to capture it at this time. So this is new available funds. This isn't current property tax owners. That amount is set. It's that we have to try to guess what the new amount will be. We don't have all the information from the assessors. We don't have everything that we need in front of us to be able to say definitively what that is. And then the truth in taxation laws that make it if we're over 5%, which we're going to be because 5% is the starting point right now, require us to start now informing the community that we're going to make this crazy guess to the best of our ability, that in April we'll find out what the real answer is, right? So it's a very awkward, nonsensical way of going about our business here. We're really in Illinois, it should be in April, we come back to you as to what the true growth in our community is, and then the board evaluates what that growth is and determines what we should do with our property taxes, because that's what's going to happen in April anyway, based on this guess, right? So it's almost like you're only penalized if you guess under and you guess wrong.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the board's trust that and understanding that that's how this kind of all works. And we will make sure we come back with a number we're confident that we don't leave any of the new construction on the table. But that, depending on what jury learns over the next month, that number could be higher than what we present today.
You go through this process every year?
Every year.
Every year. We play the game.
So, thank you, jury.
Thank you, jury.
Thank you, jury.
All right, final one is mostly your group sharing on what you learned. Our students also attended a session for the first time on Friday, so our student board members can share out. But before we get into your share out, I'm going to celebrate a little bit that Julie is last year's Holly Jack Award winner, which is the best. Which goes to the best board secretary in the state of Illinois. As being recognized that way last year, she was invited to come back this year and impart her knowledge on her peers. Terry was in the room.
Yes.
I was there.
You did a
I
fabulous
told Julie prepared the entire presentation. She was the one that everybody wanted to hear. I was just there to provide smart remarks and be comedic relief. And emotional support for Julie. But she did a fabulous job. She had over 100 people in the room. She had a group of fans lined up at the end that wanted to come and talk to her.
Yes.
She has a whole bunch of people that want all of her artifacts and documents because of the work that she does. So I know this board sees it all the time, the great work that Julie does, but it was fun to see her in a room of her peers. And, you know, when people who do the same job as you first recognize you, but then are impressed when they see the actual work you do. It was really cool to see, and it was fun to be part of that with Julie. So I just want to make sure that the board had an opportunity to see that, and I love her title. She reminds me all of the time, remember you wanted this job, that you worked really hard to be there, and that's a good reminder and level of respect that we should all have in the roles that we have. So congratulations, Julie, and job well done.
I just want to add to that, your presentation, both of you, was excellent. And everyone around me was very impressed with what you do. So thank you. Thank you for representing District 99. So thank you. Thank you.
Let's turn to our students, because they were there on Friday with our principals, with Arwen and Courtney, and they had a whole day tailored to them. So let's, Nala and Gianna, is there anything you'd like to share on your experience?
Yeah, so we sat in the Student Voices one, where pretty much it was board members and different forms of administrators and a couple principals, and we all sat in the room and they tried to connect this with the students. So it was like 33% students and like 66% adults and administrators. So it was really cool because they had us do a lot of team building activities at first. The guy who was running our session's name was Phil Boyd, and his whole thing was like team building stuff. So he made us do a lot of team building stuff. And then from there, we all sat in a circle and they just asked us about like our experiences. And it was really cool to see like the administrative side of things. Cause I know we talk, I'm talking to you guys right now, but like, it's not the actual like level of like, oh no, these are like the actual. So it was cool to be able to hear their perspectives, like my perspective, like have them hear my perspective on like more on like a personal basis. So yeah.
Yeah, adding on to what Gianna said, Mr. Boyd's like main lesson was kind of being a person first over a professional or anything else. So throughout the whole lesson or throughout the whole session, we learned different like team building exercises. And then another thing that I kind of took out of it was how he kept talking about the simple things matter. So for that, it was more of like how just a simple like how are you or how are you doing, something like that to a person will really build the connection and build those relationships. So that was kind of like the main thing of it, was all about building relationships with both students and then teachers and everything else, because in order to build those relationships, then you can be successful in like the boardroom and all that. And then with that, we also had like the mini like student sessions. So we had the teachers, like the board administration, like that section, and then we had another with just students that are also in the board. And that was also very eye-opening because we saw like different perspectives of what other schools will be going through. And we also talked about what being a board member actually is and what it entails, while also like key topics that that are like that you need to know, like especially in school, and some like controversial topics such as like mental health, sexual harassment, like those different topics. So we all got to see it all.
Yeah. Was this the first year that students went?
It's the first year I'm aware of them running this program. I don't know.
I highly recommend doing it again. It was very fun. It was interesting because it was like, I was talking to kids that's like, they had 500 kids in their entire school, and then like, and the kid right next to me would have like 4,500 kids in their school, and it was like really interesting to see like that dynamic.
So you would recommend future board members
Oh, yeah.
if they do this attend?
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Were there a lot of student board members there?
Yeah, like there was around, I think there was like 45 student representatives, and then there was like the rest were adults, so there was like 60 adults. Yeah,
so that's
like a decent, but some schools brought like 10 kids.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Bolingbrook brought like 10 kids.
Yeah, like two.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, some superintendents brought their like advisory, because they don't have student board members.
Oh.
They have like a superintendent's advisory team. So they don't necessarily sit at the board table, but they're advising the superintendent. In our district, our advisory teams sit with our principals, and then the principals come to me and say, hey, this is what we heard from our kids, right? So that's how in our district it kind of works, and then we have students at the table. So it's a mix of how districts are seeking student voice that way. So that's why some school might have 10 students there, because that's their advisory board, where we have student board members.
I think piggybacking that, Chris went to a pretty good class or seminar or whatever on student participation. So
Yeah, it was a session from it was Leiden Township High School, and they have a same as they have two high schools, and they have a student board member from each. But the way they've moved to it this year was they have one senior student board member and then a junior that they have on this year for the first time, and they're going to serve a 2-year term. So they'll serve this first year with the senior board member as like they're both new this year, but then next year they'll have another junior. They'll be a senior, and their role will be to sort of mentor the junior board member. So that way they because I feel like you two can speak to this, but by the time that you get into the role of being a board member, it's April or May, and the time's over. So they felt that this will give their students the opportunity to get a little more comfortable being that representative to their schools.
No takers?
I'll super senior just for this.
Yeah.
If I could piggyback off of that, because I went to a community engagement techniques and tactics for school boards. And the one thing I was proud of, let me get to my other notes here, is that one of the things they said was to invite student board members to start that. And we are one of 17 schools in, only 17 schools in Illinois have students on the board. So that's pretty cool that we've done this. And what is this, our 3rd or 4th year now?
7th.
7th?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been doing it for a while, yeah.
So it was right when I came on then. That's how, I swear I've lost years because of COVID, so. 7th. So we're trendsetters as far as that. There were other things they talked about ways to add a form to the district as far as a part of our district communications. Have ways where we are from the board, have a section where we talk about from the board. Another one I thought was pretty cool, how we can engage is engaging with students who have left the district, who are now, early career, and hearing from them, for us to have them come in and hear from them about their experience here and how our schools help them be ready, or not, but we hope, we get good feedback on what we have been able to do, or what they've been able to do as a result of how hard you guys work in our school district. So I thought that was a good idea. But there was a few more ideas that I thought were pretty good, but I was pretty excited about the fact that for 7 years, we've had board members.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, they also mentioned that they invite their student board members to a lot of their other events, so like the division meetings that they have and other like T99 opening, like those kinds of events, to have them be more of
A presence.
Yeah, to allow them to feel like, obviously they don't have a vote, they don't have access to sensitive material, but they're still board members along with us. So if the board is interested in appointing a 2-year term board member, we could talk about that.
With this being my first, well, for two of us, it was our first annual conference. I thought it was very inspiring just to be in that environment with over 4,000, 5,000 board members from around the state, which are all committed to trying to maximize the educational opportunities for the students in their schools, in their district. It was really, really awesome.
Anything else anybody else would like to share about
Well,
what they learned?
I went to the I always say the backwards, ISHA, Enlightenment or whatever. And there were a couple things that, I don't know who our representative that votes in that.
Athletic directors.
Is that, they each get a vote, or do they just get one vote for the district? Because they were talking about a thought that they had of taking, like, let's say football. Your first 2 games, you can play whoever you want. And then games 2 to 6 or 7 could only be schools of the same size. So that would get rid of conferences. And to me, I can see that would be a big disadvantage for like North, who plays 3 or 4 schools in the conference that are much bigger than them, that are 8A, correct? That, it's a good way for them to be better by playing bigger schools. And so I really think we should vote no for that. Just because I think it's better for a school to play up during the year. And if they come out with their record will still reflect the 2 that they played earlier. But if they have a 6-2 record, they're going to make the playoffs, and they've worked harder, let's say, to get that. So I think that's one thing I think we should vote no for, but that was just me. So anyway, they had a lot of other things that they were talking about, but that one really stood out to me as something I think.
It was a new concept that was introduced at last month's IHSA meeting. We'll be following it closely before we get to that point.
Yes, but, I didn't like that.
Noted.
And the other thing is they were trying to change the baseball season to start later, because especially northern, above 80, Route 80, it's snowing when they're starting, and if they wait 2 weeks and start it later, but a lot of schools didn't want to have the playoffs be in June. So, anyway, that guy's been trying to do it now for 15 years and hasn't been successful. So, anyway, there's that. So,
Yeah, I thought also it was excellent. So many topics. It was hard to pick the one to go to. And then just the people were amazing. I mean, it was like Gianna said, it was like you'd talk to a superintendent of a school of 6,000, and then we have one school in our whole district that's 4. It was just the diversity, and people were so happy to share. Yeah, I learned a ton. I took a lot of notes that I'm going to send to Dawn. But I would say as the new board member, the one, and they were all very interactive. I went to the decision ones just about as a new board member learning, you know, what's a superintendent decision, what's a board member decision, and it was just so well done. You know, they use that sort of polling software that I love, and the entire session was just scenario after scenario, and it was great. And I sat next to a person who had been a superintendent that was retired and is now a board member, and so like, just, I mean, I was in there as a new board member, but I just thought it was really great that people were continuing to get, I mean, he obviously knew his stuff, but there are a lot of nuances, so it was just very, you know, helpful. What's a routine superintendent decision, you know, so that was very helpful, but overall it was, yeah, just a fabulous event. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to be at it, so.
Yeah. I thought the keynote speaker on Friday was terrific. Her name was Tararai Trent, and she has grown up in Zimbabwe and, you know, very much lacking in educational opportunities, and just her perspective on, you know, how education gives you dignity and gives you independence, and it just was a very moving presentation, and so that was good. Like Sherelle, I heard that same thing, that only 17 school districts have student board members, and I was like blown away, because, you know, you're there with so many people, and I don't know really, I guess, how many school districts there are in Illinois, but
850 something.
Okay, but yeah, so I was very surprised by that, and glad that we have both of you in those roles. And then I went to one on disaster management, kind of. It was an elementary school, but they had a fire, and they just kind of talked about you know, what it took really to get back into school, and just, you know, things that you want to do. They said you always want to know your insurance, and, you know, not just like blind, you know, when they come back to you and they say, oh, let's renew, it's going to be this much this year, and you kind of just, you know, they said always go through it, look at, you know, the different layers and tiers. You know, they just, it was just very interesting. And then they also, you know, talked about how, fortunately, no one was in the building when the fire happened, but dealing, you know, when the students came back in, you know, kind of helping them through the traumatic event, and, you know, helping them to see, you know, that their school was safe, and that it was, you know, good. And they just kept saying, you know, we were so unprepared for how this was going to work, and the extent of, like, you know, even though the fire was very contained in a mechanical area, almost every room in the school was damaged from smoke or soot, you know, and the walls and things that had to be taken down, and the teacher supplies and things that, you know, people buy with their own money, and, you know, I mean, it was just a lot. So it was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to share another one that I went to, was investing and borrowing in current interest rate environment. That one was really interesting, and when I saw about a 20-page PowerPoint, I knew that one was going to be a deep one. So I will share the PowerPoint slide, but I thought that was interesting because I'm certain since I've been on the board, the interest rates, the climate hasn't looked quite like this. So I was really curious to see how they, talk about approach borrowing money and what the perspective is from, schools and how we should be looking at this. So I'll share the PowerPoint, but I did learn some things. Some things were kind of like, wow, that's a lot to think about, And I'm glad we have smart people that do that.
I attended a presentation on the law with regard to gender issues, and identity issues. The law is catching up. It's going to take a while because how society is dealing with these issues is ahead of legal decisions. So the presentation, while fascinating, left a lot to be desired because we just don't have much law to really indicate how to decide some of these issues. But what I would say is that my favorite part of the joint conference is always the opportunity for the seven of us to spend some time together outside of this room. Because of the restrictions on the Open Meetings Act, we don't get an opportunity to do that. And just having the opportunity to sit down and have breakfast with you guys on Saturday morning, I think is just as beneficial as some of the other things that we do in this conference, is just to get to talk to you, each of you individually, outside of the confines of the ASC. So I always look forward to just the social aspect of us being able to get together and form a bond and relationship that I think will help us work together as a board in difficult roads ahead.
And just to be clear, those are social interactions. We're not discussing
We're not
board
discussing
business.
board business.
But it's just,
Right.
we talked about
Football.
Nebraska football and the Bears.
Yes.
Those kinds of personal connections that
Yes.
is Nala mentioned. Those personal connections are important when it comes down. We have difficult conversations and those kinds of things.
Well, speaking of that conversation, I had a nice talk with Tom Rugale from District 68. And many years ago, I think I'm probably the only one that was on the board at the time, but we used to get together with each of the sender districts' boards and have an evening of dinner and, some sort of a program, whether it be from one of the high schools or, whatever group that was chosen. But he would like to see us get that back because then we would get to know who our Cinder board members are, because I wouldn't know them at this point. I don't know, but a few from 68. I don't know any from 68 or 61 or any of those. So
I'll just remind everybody, there's 2 opportunities a year to do that already,
Yeah.
which are at the division
Dinners.
meetings.
yeah,
Yes.
but he liked the idea that each table had each different board member. So it wasn't like you were all sitting and, 99 was all sitting together and 68 was sitting all together. Everybody was separate, and we get to, find out who they were and a little bit about them in a more of a closed setting versus out at a division meeting. So anyway, he's going to be bringing that to his superintendent, and so when you meet with them, they're going to talk about it.
It'll
So
probably
just-
go the same spot it's gone for the last 8 years, Terry.
Yeah, I know.
It takes 6 boards to all want to do that.
I
It has
know,
not been
I
the
know,
case for the
but,
last 8
but,
years.
I know, but,
Which is why but division meetings are a great opportunity to make those.
but sometimes you don't always get that separation. Everybody wants to sit together and, because they know each other. It's forcing you to meet other people, which isn't a bad thing. So,
I just wanted to add one more thing to piggyback off of what Don said. The social, which was outside of board business, because in addition to obviously of us volunteering to be school board meetings members, it is great to talk in here. In addition to that, we are, parents, we are employees, we are students, we are employers in some cases, so we're caretakers, so it is good to get an opportunity to talk, because we do have a ton of other things in addition to volunteering for this board that we are responsible for, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Also, to piggyback on what Don said, it was really interesting at that breakfast, because the breakfast was from 7:30 to 9 o'clock. And by, I would say, probably 8:30, everybody had left except our table. And we were in our own world. I don't even think we realized that everybody had left. But we were there for probably another hour. And when we saw we were the only ones there, we said, oh, we're sorry, we're going to leave. They were like, no, stay as long as you want. But I think that is really symbolic of how cohesive of a board we have, which means there's no internal conflict, and we can totally focus on what we are here to do, which is for our students, for our teachers, for our administrators, and for our community. And I just think that is so powerful, that we are a cohesive unit with no conflict, so we can totally focus on what our purpose is.
I just may choose to not sit next to you next time.
What, you don't like wearing orange?
No, I accidentally spilt a cup of coffee on that. But my reflexes were fast.
Not fast.
Cleanup was smooth. And Don, like I said, we were a very understanding, cohesive group, was very forgiving.
Just not forgetting. All right. We good?
All right.
All right, last one. FOIA requests, we've received them. They're on our website and available if anybody searches for FOIA, and there's a link there to recently fulfilled ones.
Okay, item 7, the consent agenda. Before the board votes on the consent agenda, is there any agenda item a board member would like to pull out of the consent agenda for further discussion? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion for the Board of Education to approve the consent agenda as presented, which includes A, personnel report, appointments classified, B, personnel report, retirements certified, resignations classified, C, personnel report, termination classified, D, October treasurer's report and October financial pages, E, revised 2024-25 school calendar, F, student tour, G, acceptance of donation, District 99 Education Foundation, and H, acceptance of donation, T99 Anonymous Family.
So moved.
Second.
I would like to go on the tour, though, to Japan.
Me too.
That sounds really good.
Terry moved, Chris seconds.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Mr. Espinoza,
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller,
Aye.
Jenny Hagstrom,
Aye.
Kara Caston,
Aye.
Ken Dawson,
Aye.
and Don Renner.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you, of course, to the Education Foundation and to the Anonymous family that's supporting a social event at T99 that looks really pretty cool. I'll go on that one, too.
Yeah, I want to go on that one,
Fun.
too, yeah. That sounds like fun. I haven't bowled in years.
Item 8.
Before we get into this, I just want to confirm the number, jury. In the packet, we have 108,356,520.
That's just in the narrative of the recommendation blurb, but the
Correct.
actual chart is 108,245,520.
Which one do we want to ask the board?
The one in the chart,
So give me that number again.
245.
245.
108,
Okay.
245, even?
520.
520. So let me make sure that you got it? Yep.
Okay, can I get a motion for the Board of Education to approve the 2023 tentative levy for $245,520 as presented? The administration also recommends that the Board of Education set the date and time of the Truth in Taxation public hearing for December 18th, 2023 at 6:30 PM at the ASC, which is located at 6301 Springside Avenue, Downers Grove, Illinois, 60516.
So moved.
Second.
Chris moves, Ken second.
Thank you very much. Mr. Espinoza.
Aye.
Ken Dawson.
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller. Aye. Jenny Hagstrom.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Kara Caston. Aye. And Don Renner.
Aye, motion carries. Any old business?
None.
Any new business?
None.
Any reception of visitors?
None.
Reporting on Lend. Jenny?
Well, we didn't really have any, or did we? No, we
No.
haven't, no, so we just had the breakfast Saturday morning, and we will have a meeting in January?
January,
Yeah.
and not much came out of the veto
No,
sessions.
no.
There wasn't any really significant movement
Yeah.
on much of anything, which was a shock.
Hank, can you cover the report on SACID?
Yeah, they are in the process of going through candidates for the executive director position. There'll be a set of first and second round of interviews. The second round I'm at, and I think there's also members of the governing board that Sherelle serves on will be invited to part of that. And then I think they're planning January of asking for approval of a candidate. So I think we have a meeting in a couple of weeks where I'll learn more about who the candidates are, but I know that they are attracting quality individuals. So.
And a report on the Education Foundation?
Kara and I are going to tag team on this, and do you want to go first?
So I'm going to update on the recent grants. So just a reminder, this is a nonprofit organization that provides funding to support innovative projects that fall outside of traditional funding. Over the, since '94 when they were established, they've awarded over $300,000 in grants to D99. The grants range from a couple hundred up to 2,000. And this fall, they have given close to 8,000 in learning grants to D99, three at South, one at North, and one at T99. The projects include purchasing a laser cutter and engraver to support the Robotics Club, Maker Club, Science Club, and Mustang Way at South, providing diverse texts in classrooms to support world languages and the English Learners Program at South, purchasing drones to provide hands-on learning of engineering concepts at South, making updates to the Ready sensory room for special services at North, and providing assistive technology via alternative tools for communication and interaction opportunities at T99. And if anyone wants to learn more about the foundation, it's d99ef.org.
Okay. And then I have, they approved giving money to the district for the speaker for the fall. So I think you and Julia will probably work together on funding and all that.
Oh, for when we return next fall.
Right, for
That's
next
great, because we're starting
fall.
to have those conversations.
Yeah, yeah, so Julia would be the contact for that.
That's great news.
And, yeah, but depends on how much it is,
Great news no matter what. We appreciate whatever support the foundation can offer.
We'll cuss and discuss, as
All
I
right,
say.
sounds good.
And the Mark McDonald Scholarship opportunities were approved, and you should be getting a letter very shortly on that to be given out for donations to different organizations that he was involved in, because I think he was...
A lot of Mark's former colleagues have reached out and are interested in participating as well.
Yeah, yeah, so I figured that one will be a good one for him. And then, and also for our students who will be getting that, the scholarship money. And then we're also going to be sending out the end of the year ask. So if you get it, please donate. And then if you would like to donate, you can still go to the foundation website, which is accessed through the CSD99 website too. But you can also donate for the end of the year for your taxes. So that's always a good opportunity.
Thank you. Ken, can we get a report on the ISB?
Well, we were at the conference. I think the conference was outstanding. All of us learned quite a bit. I represented our board at the delegate assembly, which went smoothly. There was not any of the controversial issues which my colleague here had to deal with. in the prior year. So it was quite a success, a very excellent, outstanding weekend. Look forward to doing it again in a year.
All right. So upcoming board meetings, our next board meeting is going to be a workshop meeting on December 4th here at the ASC at 6:30 PM, followed in for the 18th of December for a regular business meeting again at the ASC at 6:30.
And that December 18th meeting will include the public hearing for the levy.
Okay, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Hold on, before I think we would be remiss
Yes, we
to
would be. Yes, we would.
leave without congratulating our great football team at Downers North, going down to compete for the state championship.
I'm
I
not
think that is
celebrating yet.
totally
They're
awesome.
going to win on Saturday, then we'll really celebrate.
Well, we're celebrating now. Yeah. Stay in the present. Let's celebrate that accomplishment. It's just a phenomenal thing, and it's a great group of athletes, coaches. It's really, in the community, has really rallied around. They turned out at the game. It's just a fantastic ride. So, congratulations.
Well, don't forget the first place boys cross-country team and the second place girls cross-country did a fabulous job from North. North is just eating it up right now.
It's a really good time to be a student at North right now.
Yes.
My senior year, we're doing awesome.
Yes, yes, and I don't know how they did at the girls' swim.
They did good.
Yeah.
They did.
Several
They had.
qualifiers and a couple girls make finals. So.
They had 7 events that they were going to, so that was a big deal. So congratulations to all of those students for working hard and doing their best, and we hope that there is more to come.
Yeah, on both sides of town, it has been, between the arts, activities, athletics, it has been an incredible fall. Lots of individual student success, team success, a lot of great performances. I mean, it has been an amazing school year, and it's fun to see kids operating at that top level. I did in my weekly updates, I feel like I have to constantly, recognize a ton of staff because we have so much success and things going on. Obviously the teachers that support all those kids and staff members are putting in lots of extra time this fall in so many different ways, as is the administration and support staff. It's a lot of events to cover and a lot of great time going on, but what an exciting time to be in District 99.
Yes, so congratulations to all. Now we can.
Now with that, can I have a
Yes.
motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moves, Ken's, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, we're closed.
And don't forget, have a